can start now. Dean's here.
Yeah, really.
Okay, welcome everyone. If I could call the meeting to order. This is the Wednesday, June 8th meeting of the Resource Management Administration Committee of the Grand Traverse County Board. And we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if the clerk would call the roll, please.
Commissioner Fleece. Commissioner Gilman.
Here.
Henschel.
Here.
Inman.
Here.
Lemkool.
Here.
Maxbauer. Here. Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Richardson.
Here.
Posted correctly in June.
Okay.
Section 1.
Next, we have the approval of the minutes. The closed session minutes have been taken back to correct a couple typos, so we'll look at them in a month, if that's all right with everyone.
Okay.
If I could have a motion on the regular session of the May 11th minutes?
So moved. Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. This brings us to the first public comment, and before the clerk reads the rules, I would point out, I know a lot of you folks are here to talk about, to provide public comment on the MSU extension question, and I will allow public comment at that time for those of you who want to stay. Otherwise, obviously, there's an opportunity right now as well.
Couldn't hear you.
I will allow public comment at the time that we talk about MSU extension, as well as our regular public comment at the start and end of the meeting.
Will you make comments either
Time.
now or later, or?
Now or later, yes. But not both. Well, no, I'm not going to, I'm not going to restrict anyone from speaking, but you will have an opportunity either time. So anyway, if the clerk would read the rules first.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment should be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. 1. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. 2. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer the commissioner's questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairman may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Okay, would anyone like to address the board now? Please come forward.
Are the microphones on?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't hear her very well.
Okay.
I'm Donald Barrows, 10351 High Meadows Court. It's Elmwood Township in beautiful Leelanau County, where we do have a substantial fund balance. I would like to hand these out to your board. Does somebody?
Yeah, we can get someone to hand that out. We can get her to hand that out.
In that packet, you're going to find a letter from Mackinac Center based on the 2003 when they tried to start dismantling Michigan State University Cooperative Extension. My statements tonight are based on the information that was given in the Ruptured Eagle, or the Ruptured Eagle, however you want to pronounce it here, today's edition. And it has to do with the fact that in Leelanau County, there's a bunch of us that think that cooperative extension is just nothing more than an old dinosaur that's lived above and beyond the scope of its original authority. And now they're into certain items that, if you start looking at it, you're going to find out that you're buying those same services from other organizations in your county. And it's time to stop spending twice for the same information you're getting. There's information that I have that I picked up at these extension offices on how to prepare hardwood for your furnaces. The Master Gardener program, Leelanau County had only dealt with 50 people. Trying to figure out if you know what the agriculture and home horticulture program is under the cooperative extension, the community and economic development under cooperative extension, family nutritional program under cooperative extension, groundwater protection and sea grant under cooperative extension, home economics under cooperative extension, parent education under cooperative extension, Safe Kids under the cooperative extension, mother-to-mother program, I'm sure you're buying that from several sources, the 4-H fairs, I don't know if your fair is still a 4-H fair, but there are several of them are that we're paying for, managing your septic system, family nutrition program, here's another one here called Michigan Citizen Planner, taking a look at shared services. I'm trying to find, in Michigan State University, Cooperative Extension is involved in the Unigovernment Cooperative Services Program, which is to get rid of the township government and put it in the hands of the county. This is only a few of the items. I've got a whole car full of this junk that I've picked up, and I think that we're making a mistake here by funding them based on these services. I know you're buying these services from other organizations in your county, and you should go back and do a line item by line item on what you're getting from cooperative extension and what you're already getting from other programs in your county. As far as the farmers are concerned in Leelanau County, we've got a lot of fruit farmers, dairy farmers, all the rest, but there's not that many of them. We don't need the extension agent anymore. Trying to think of a few other things. When you buy the cherry trees to put in the ground, they all have information from the grafting operation or the nursery. When you buy the stuff that comes from for herbicides or pesticides, that's all on the can. You can refer to it on your laptop computer. So most of these items that you're buying through cooperative extension are just, actually we're looking at it from the standpoint is it's just keeping state employees employed. And in our case at the state of Michigan, or as taxpayers in the state of Michigan, are we paying double duty for what we're buying? And that was the extent of my comment.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make public comment at this time?
Thanks.
Please, come forward.
Excuse me. My name is Tammy Budrow, and I'm at 6096 Inman Road, Southwest Fife Lake, Michigan. I would like to share with you why Safe Kids Injury Prevention Program is so very valuable to me and why it is so valuable to your community. 4 years ago, I was looking for injury prevention education for winter safety. How hard could it be? It was very hard because nothing existed. I called everywhere, nothing. Everyone I talked with said, wow, what a great idea, but they had nothing to offer. I went online, there's a ton of injury prevention information in print everywhere, but nothing like that. Nothing like what I was looking for. I was thinking along the lines of car seat safety, bicycle safety, fire safety, etc. I realized then I would have to start from scratch and create my own, but how? Then I met Jennifer Ritter from Safe Kids. She had the knowledge and the resources that I was looking for. Together we have developed an award-winning winter safety program that is being offered at local schools. Last year, over 3,600 children were educated about winter safety, and 600 plus helmets were given to 13 different schools. I would like to add that all of the schools have requested that we please bring the program back next year. Munson Medical Center has made a monetary contribution to the county for the Safe Kids Injury Prevention Program. There is a partnership with Metro Fire's Risk Watch program teaching several modules in their Risk Watch schools, including in and around cars, winter safety, and pedestrian safety. Safe Kids manages all of the local car seat technicians maintaining their continued education for recertification, inspection stations, Grand Traverse County Car Seat Referral Program with Health Department and DHS. These services are not offered anywhere else. They are not duplicates. Sure, you can go to the police station and you can have your child's car seat inspected, or you can help get it installed, but Safe Kids is the one training our officers for them to have the ability to do this. Winter safety program, nationally, this is the only one. I lost my 8-year-old daughter, Carly, 4.5 years ago to a sledding accident, and if she and/or I had been educated about the dangers of winter fun, I'm certain she would have been wearing a helmet that day, and possibly it would have saved her life, and she would have been right by my side last Sunday at her older sister Hannah's high school graduation. I cannot stress to you enough how important injury prevention is. I believe this does save lives. I believe that all of the programs offered by Safe Kids Injury Prevention are very valuable, and that your county needs safe kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else this time?
Good evening. My name is Tim Hinckley. I live at 3015 East Partridge Court in Traverse City. I'm the executive director of the National Cherry Festival, and just wanted to briefly touch on the MSU extension in somewhat of a different light. During Cherry Festival, there's a little event that goes on. It's called Cherry Connection, and over the last several years, we've had several people tell us that they never knew anything about this particular event. And what it is that it's a 5-day event where we send people from the open space up through the cherry growing area of Leelanau to Hort Center. We cap out at about 3,000 every year. Surveys we do, most of these people are from either downstate or out of state. They've never even seen our region before, especially the cherry growing region. It's an educational, informative experience, and the survey information that we're getting back, it I think lends to the credence of some of the work that's being done on just a different level. People go up there and they actually go through an orchard tour. They talk to farmers. They're seeing all the latest cherry products. They're talking to manufacturers and processors. And it's people of all ages. It's a small piece of what they do. It's a big piece as far as the importance to the Cherry Festival, but I think the end result is that people are coming back all the time, and we can't get any more than the 3,000 that go up there on a week, on an annual basis. And I just think that the collaborative effort that we see in just this one small piece, aside from the other things that I know the Cherry Festival experiences on a year-round basis with, you know, Nikki and Jennifer and some of the other people we work up there and the work that we've seen. It's something like this that isn't very well known, but is, I think, very, very important to some of the work that they're doing. Just wanted to make sure you were aware of the Cherry Connection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Donald Coe. I live at 211 Midtown Drive in Grand Traverse County. I'm here in two regards. One is Chair of the Michigan Commission of Agriculture to point out the importance of the relationship between the Michigan Commission of Agriculture and Rural Development now and MSU Extension. The second is as an operator of an agricultural-based business within both Leelanau and Grand Traverse counties. The first, I'd like to say just a quick word on what the compact under the Morrell Act and the Extension Act between the federal government, the state government, and county governments means. That's a compact that requires joint investment, both by the federal government and the state governments and the county governments, in a program of rural and economic development services that are delivered by our land-grant universities to the counties. That compact requires joint funding between all three bodies in order to enjoy the investments both from the federal government, the state government, at a county level. I'm always interested when I hear people talk about budgets in this particular environment because, as you might imagine, in the Commission of Agriculture and Rural Development, we deal with state budgets all the time. And when you look at the various segments of the budget that I think are being presented to you by the new extension compact agreement, 5-year compact agreement, has the extension, just as the state and as I know here in the county, been responsible and reasonable in looking at costs of the services they're providing? I think when you look at the numbers, that the extension agreements with you have represented substantial savings, and savings in the neighborhood of about 20% to the county commitments to the federal and state funding commitments. We in the state are facing 15 and 20% reductions also. So we at the state, we're having the same squeeze as, and the Michigan state's having that same squeeze with you and the counties, but they've been responsible in responding to those economic requirements. What they're asking you for in the small part of the budget is separate from the program dollars. The program dollars will come to you year by year, and you'll have an opportunity to be involved in the actual programs that are run in the county itself, but they are looking at the 4-H office and office services. You know, and that's a very small part of the budget, and they're asking for a 5-year commitment on that. It would be no different than the sheriff coming into you and asking you for a 5-year commitment to have a jail, or the chief of the courts to come into you and ask you to have a 5-year commitment to running county courts, or for whoever is the office administrator in this building coming in and say, we'd like a 5-year commitment to the maintenance of this county, city office building. They have to hire employees. They have to offer the employees some continuity of employment. They have to be able to require the skill sets that they need for filling those positions. And if you want, as a county, to go back to saying to people that all jobs are ad hoc on 1-year assignments with no guarantee of employment after that assignment, and things as basic as administrative services, I think you wouldn't do that to your other departments. And why would you do that to a service which is essentially a department of the county? I always like it when people come in and say, Extension doesn't do anything for the farmers, and I'll speak as a farmer. I started my businesses, and I was new to agriculture. And I can guarantee you that many of us in the wine industry would never have been able to get our businesses off the ground if we didn't have a Duke Elsner to help us on integrated pest management, to help us on identifying diseases, if we didn't have a hort station that had test plants and vineyards out there so that we could see what would grow in this area. That's part of the Extension mission. The Extension mission is to bring the best of education, science, and research to the farm community for those of us who are farmers who can't afford to have those services ourselves or can't afford the time to develop our knowledge of the particular areas. We don't have 20 years to learn to get a return on our products when we spend $20,000 or $30,000 an acre to plant a vineyard. We need people there to tell us which grapes to crop, to plant, which grapes to have in our vineyards, what land to plant our vineyards on, what pests are going to attack our vineyard crops. Those are all services that you would expect to be extended under agricultural, economic, and rural development activities. We do have a lot of farmers in this county. We have 1,400 farmers and 1,100 farms in the 4-county area. A good number of them are still in Grand Traverse County. I was to you not too long ago talking about expansion of shoreline fruit, and those growers are going to need help. The telling thing in this regard is that the farmers themselves put up the money for the hort station. They are investing in Extension themselves. This is not a government handout or a free ride. These are activities that are adding to the economic activity around us every day. So I ask for your support. And one last thing, because I saw that in the newspaper. This is not the Girl Scouts or some other agency. The services they provide and in human services also that they provide are through the resources of the state and federal government and our and our extension service. It's entirely different than the Girl Scouts. These are programs that bring in federal, state, and a major educational facility to help organize programs, and they're all coordinated. If you haven't sat on a regional or a county extension council and see that all of these service groups are at the table and are being organized to work together. We don't have an abundance of extra services. We don't have agencies out there competing with each other. What they do in the extension councils is to ensure that every agency that's involved in public service work are working together to provide services together efficiently for the community. I ask for your support for their budget request.
Thank you. Anyone else, please?
Hi, I'm Deanna Kelly, and I live at 538 Washington Street. I am also a retired county employee. I worked at the Grand Traverse County Health Department until about 3 years ago. I read the paper this morning, and I did have some concern about MSU Extension. I worked for the Health Department for 17 years, and we worked so closely with MSU Extension on two very important programs, and then one that they just started just before I left, and I haven't heard two of them mentioned tonight, and one is Project Fresh. That's a program that I don't know what it is now, but it was about $30,000 worth of funding to the farmers market. Coupons were given along with what I've heard mentioned a couple times tonight, nutrition education on how to use fresh fruits and vegetables, local fresh fruits and vegetables, at the farmers market. And these were all WIC families, so they're under a certain percentage of the poverty line that are taught how to use these. And they wouldn't use the farmers market if they weren't able to learn how to use the fresh fruits and vegetables, because some people think that it takes a lot of time and they're more expensive. But in turn, then they continue to use those throughout the year, and these are our local products. The other one is on the other end of the age spectrum, and that's the Senior Fresh, where these same kinds of things are being done through MSU Extension to offer coupons to the senior community to use the farmers market. And this isn't funding that they get from Grand Traverse County. This is state funding that comes in, and they do the nutrition education and distribute the coupons. And I know at the Health Department, when I was there, and it had been for many years, it was a collaborative effort. They worked alongside of our WIC program to offer the nutrition education. We helped distribute the coupons through our WIC program, and we helped also recruit and make sure that families got to their appointments. And then we reinforced it again. So it was a collaborative program. In fact, in all the years I worked with them, they always seemed to step up to the plate in the family programs to offer where those gaps in services were, like the Parents as Teachers program. They did lose a lot of funding over the years for Parents as Teachers because it was written through a grant that lost its funding. But now I understand they're receiving some funding through DHS to offer the same program to at-risk families. And these at-risk families have already had a CPS referral. So they're helping when we talk about parenting by going into the home and helping parents who haven't had a good example of how to be a parent. They don't have a role model to help them with these parenting skills. And in turn, that helps when these children get to school. So I'm here, too, to ask for your support for MSU Extension. I know budgets are hard, and there's a lot of difficult decisions to be made, but this is one community agency that I remember working with that was truly collaborative and stretched their dollars as far as they could. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Charles Kovas. I live at 8467 Davis Road in Southern Grant Township at the southern end of the county. I just came today to talk briefly about the end product that we see. I think I straddle some interesting lines in this community. Of my 39 years, I've spent 31 of them in 4-H, not only as a youngster and my parents overseeing my projects, but now as a young father with a beautiful wife and 6 lovely children who are heavily involved in 4-H. But the straddle part is, and I'm a 4-H leader in the local area for approximately 40 students who attend Buckley and Kingsley school districts, because Grant Township is, centered out in that area. But the interesting part of the other end of my spectrum is I'm a local principal at Traverse City West Senior High, and we have a large number of 4-H'ers through the west side of town and out through the Long Lake District. So not only working with the youth in the Kingsley, Buckley, but also the Traverse City area, I work with them and their parents, not necessarily in a 4-H capacity, but in a, principal administrator capacity, working on the successes of their family and dealing with the family on multiple issues. And what I wanted to talk about, again, briefly, was the then product that I see. There's folks here are going to talk about the dollars being spent and some of that end of the spectrum. I want to spend time on those kids that I work with. In my own family, the kid I and my brothers grew up to represent in our community. And right now there are so many distractions for the youth in this entire area. I think we all have spent plenty of time watching youngsters walk around with their head on their cell phone, plugging away at the computer, whatever new digital media is around the corner. None of that can occur when they're spending time working with their animal. I'm going to leave here tonight, grab a youngster from a baseball game, and head home to work on our 4-H project. The time I spend with my kids working on projects and with my group working on their projects and the influences I can have on them, or working with their families on the structure of their projects and working with their animals. Those are just challenges that are fading away a little bit in all of the communities around us. It is the Young Family Farm, which I grew up on, but is now not an operating farm, and the small family farm I have, it is some of the skills and the management that comes to those youngsters, my own included, isn't available in any of the other programs that I'm familiar with, and the learning and the problem solving and the perseverance of working through those projects, not only in the kids I work with as a leader, but as a parent and as an administrator. Those kids and their abilities to handle crisis, to handle challenges that will rise in their life outside of 4-H, I think that is one of the biggest skills we bring to them. And the value of, I am out there on Saturday mornings with my child, with my 7-year-old mother, wrestling with her 4-H project. That is quality time that all of the kids I work with, both with my group and at school, are just, it's a fading opportunity. So I hope for your support to help continue the quality kids those efforts are turning out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Cheryl Bloomquist, 108632 South Blue Ridge Lane in Traverse City. I'm here to echo Deanna Kelly's words about collaboration with MSU Extension and early childhood programs in the community. Dan and I both have a long history with working together with MSU Extension in programs that serve families with our youngest children, pregnant women, children from birth to age 5 or 6. I am currently the chairperson for the Grand Traverse County Collaborative 0 to 6 work group, and we work very diligently and effectively together as program managers, program directors from across the county's early childhood programs to make sure that there isn't duplication of services, that families receive the services they're in most need of, and work very effectively, I believe, in making sure that duplication doesn't occur, and we're very effective. I think we use many of our resources well and economically. I think we're very careful about that. So there is a system in place to ensure that families receive the services that they need that help them, rather than having more services than they need or services that aren't effective in meeting their needs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tony Ryan, 862 Marjan Drive, Traverse City. I worked for the Department of Human Services almost 30 years now, and the last several have been with Child Protective Services. in two ways. I've been collaborating a lot with MSU Extension. One of them is with car seats. There's no duplication anywhere to help needy families get car seats for kids. I'm working with Jen Ritter, so when we get money, we get car seats. They store them, they instruct people how to use them. It's a very necessary item, but a lot of people just have funds for. And the several years I worked in protective services, most of the cases I worked with, they all had something getting in the way of family functioning. They needed some parent education. I almost exclusively would use MSU Extension as for parent aides to come into the household and help remove barriers that are there, keep families together, because that's what drives the bus at DHS. We don't want them placed out of the home. If they are, we want them back, if we can do that. These parent aides, I'm here to tell you many examples of my families have done just that. Have put the families back together again and kept them there, and that's where they belong, and that's best for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone?
Hi, I'm Val Stone, and my address is 505 Chesapeake in Traverse City. My job happens to be at Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency, which deals with basically low-income people. We're a nonprofit. And through the years, I have been working with whatever person happens to be working at MSU in the family nutrition program. We've had some really great ones. I can tell you, without a doubt, dealing with low-income people is a different story than sending someone to a class. And the MSU Extension people build those relationships. We have partnered with them for probably at least 20 years with our commodity supplemental food program and also the TFAP, which are USDA government programs, food giveaway programs. And you think, well, that's a wonderful thing, which it is, but a lot of people don't know what to do with those foods, fruits and vegetables that are canned and ready to go. And MSU Extension has been a wonderful partner in doing a one-on-one counseling with them, providing recipes, demonstration, and nutrition education. That program actually sees about 3,000 people a month, and the TFAP probably close to that same thing on a quarterly basis. So we're talking about a lot of people who are impacted by the education that they receive. In addition to that, the nutrition educator serves on a lot of committees that I happen to sit on too. She is, our local one here, sits as a person who is a resource person for food safety, food education, and provides recipes for 5 counties. The Northwest Food Coalition happens to serve, that's 47 pantries in our 5-county area. And in 2010, they served 246,000 people. Now, that doesn't mean there's that many people living there, but there were that many visits and people received food at those food pantries. And that nutrition education is very important in the food safety. Every month that a meeting is attended, there's always questions, I think. And let's see, just kind of piggybacking on the idea about the local farmers. Many of you, I recognize that you were born here in Traverse City, you're natives, and I think all of us could agree that we were seeing the erosion of our farmlands. How many subdivisions are out there now where once there were cherry trees or farming operations? And one of the big partners is MSU Extension, along with 4 others, including our agency, with the Fresh Food Partnership. Their goal is to provide food, fresh food and vegetables to low-income people through the pantry system. One of the main purposes is that providing that food, but also to buy from local farmers. They don't buy from Myers, they buy from a local farmer. And that is helping to keep those farmers in operation so that the Traverse City area will look like Traverse City, and it doesn't look like a large subdivision. So I think all of those pieces and those collaborations that you've heard about is still important. It is very important that we maintain those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, at this time, I will close public comment. And next item would be the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Support.
I have a motion, support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. No special orders of business? Okay, next we have the consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such request will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. 1, Road Commission Monthly Report. 2, Conservation District Staff Report, May 2011. 3, Housing Liaison Report. 4, New Lighting System Statistics for Civic Center.
Okay, would any member of the public like any of these items removed from the consent calendar for further discussion? Any member of the board? I could have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I would second that.
Sorry. Whatever.
That's good. That's fine.
Okay. By roll call, please.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes.
Axbauer?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Richardson?
Yes. Okay, brings us to our first department action item, which is the Health Services Building.
That would be 2/3 of our packet tonight.
Yeah.
About 3 weeks ago, this is our health officer, Grand Traverse Health Department.
Okay, Fred, could you have Ray introduce himself also, and then...
Ray Kendra, CWS Architects, Traverse City.
Okay, thank you.
About 3 weeks ago, Ray gave a report to the ad hoc committee regarding the possibility of building a new building in lieu of remodeling the existing one, and he was told to proceed with that, and he's here tonight to do a presentation in that regard.
Would we, you all have the drawings that were submitted as part of your packet.
Right.
Would you like me to put this up on the screen as well? I do have my computer to do a presentation.
Yeah, if you could, and perhaps, at least we could briefly show the pictures for anyone, watching on TV.
Want to take a 5-minute break, or?
We'll take a brief break here while we can set up.
Good idea.
said she's near the stadium. She was happy, yeah. She said it's an older part of campus and she can see the stadium. By the library? Got my house designed, my retirement home.
You gotta change that because every time I put that up.
Hey, good to see you. You're welcome, you're welcome. Quite a crowd here tonight, don't you?
Fred and Ray, if you'd like to
just
continue
keep
with your
going.
presentations. On the question about a new health services building. Thank you.
We'll check it out.
Okay. I'd feel more comfortable.
Folks,
I'd feel more comfortable if I had one of those keys. Could see who goes in there, what we can do.
I need a gavel.
Folks,
Folks, we're ready to go.
My ball back?
Okay, well, anyway, subsequent to the ad hoc committee meeting, Ray met with myself and the rest of the staff and worked on a design basically to meet the needs of the clinics in the administrative areas, the dental clinic and the EOC. And he has a preliminary drawings on it and some estimates on construction and so forth, which you have in your packets.
So I'd be happy to answer any specific questions any of the commissioners may have. We were able to present the majority of the information that you have in your packet at the committee meeting. So just to recap, I guess, where we've been and where we're at. We originally started with looking at the Garfield Road property and doing a renovation at that building. We proceeded through approximately 50% of the construction documents en route to bidding that project as per board authorization. Then we had stopped. We looked at the Cherryland Mall property and explored the option of using that as the building. So we had done some preliminary design work on that, had presented that, and then subsequently looked at a few other options. We are currently at the Lafreniere Road property. We are authorized to go ahead and proceed with these schematic designs that we have, that you have in your packet. We're complete with that, to that stage. The design of the building, it's a 32,000 square foot building. It would be new construction. It would be on the property that the county already owns on Lafreniere. We did meet with John Syke, the county planner, Danny Brown, and other individuals in terms of looking at the master plan of that site. So we did determine that future construction for several different sized buildings could occur there. In your packet, the site plan indicates a building that has a square or a footprint of approximately 148,000 square feet. There's another facility that says 1,000. It should actually say 10,000 square feet at the rear of the property. And then towards the front of the property, there's another footprint indicated for 25,000 square feet. So we were trying to indicate that the ability to do future expansion on that parcel and still cite the proposed county services building there would it work. We also show an extension of parking areas, so we have a variety of parking areas and quantities, again, indicating that there is space on the property for multiple buildings into the future. So that was primarily the site plan. The building is oriented to face Lafreniere, and it is kind of sited so that it is consistent with the existing county services building, with the concept that we're trying to create a campus of county facilities long into the future, and this would be the second piece of that to go along with the existing building that is there. We did some renderings that are also in your packet, and those would reflect, again, the look of the building that we're proposing would be consistent with the existing county services building. It wouldn't be exactly the same. We're looking at some different materials, not necessarily the metal roof, not brick veneer all the way across, but we'd like to incorporate some elements that would tie those two buildings together, both material-wise, color-wise, again, sort of branding this location. There is existing activities that occur in the building there that would go along with Fred's departmental responsibilities, so we sited it close to that building to have that connection be much closer than what he currently has now between Garfield and Lafreniere. Additionally, I guess the only other things that I'll point out are, as Fred has indicated, we've accommodated all the different departmental areas required, being the dental clinic, the WIC clinic, the prevention clinic, administrative offices, shared spaces, and then MAHP nurses in additional office space that goes along with the activities that take place at the health department building. And at the lower level, so that those functions would occur on the main level, easy access for the public. On the lower level, we have storage, some staff areas, and then we've also included the Emergency Operations Center as part of the program for the lower level. So right now we're looking at a 2-story building with one of the stories being below grade, but we're providing for windows as indicated on the drawings so that there would be the ability to bring in natural light and access to that lower level from the exterior. We're looking at trying to incorporate as much environmentally responsible construction techniques and activities as we can there. The estimates that we've put together are preliminary at this point, but at least it'll give you a comparison between what we were looking at the Garfield Road site and what we're looking at with new construction. So,
And Larry, before you comment, I would just like to make one comment to the public. First of all, I'd like to apologize that we're not able to quickly figure out how to put pictures up on for display here, but if you go to the Grand Traverse County website and look at the Resource Management Administration packet for tonight, all the various artist renderings and so forth are part of that packet, and you can look at it there on, on your computer at home. Go ahead, Larry.
Well, I guess couple real quick questions is the square footage on Garfield, total square footage for the existing building and the additional building, is that comparable to the same square footage that is in this current design?
it is. We were approximately right in the same neighborhood, between 32 and 33,000 square feet at each of the locations. The difference being at the Lafreniere location, we obviously would have room for expansion that we don't have at Garfield. So that was.
And is it my understanding that we are at basically the same point in terms of a process for both the Garfield location and the Lafreniere location that we have in our packet in terms of design, specs, those kinds of things? So if the board desired, we can have both projects bid out and then make a decision once those bids come back in.
If you decide that you want to bid both projects, you're doubling your architecture cost for the design, bid specs, engineering. That is not the concept.
These are not bid documents.
Oh, these are not bid documents.
All this is to give you a financial idea of what this building would cost.
Okay.
So that you could make a decision on whether or not you want to go at the existing building, a brand-new building. Because remember, last time you said, hey, this is pretty interesting, let's look at a new building and compare the cost. That's all this is for. Once you make a decision, if you decide to move ahead with a building, then Ray will spend the money with Ray to do the design and the engineering and the bid documents, and then we'll bid that project out. We're not bidding two projects out, or at least that wasn't our intent, unless you want to do that.
My question was, is the information we have currently available, is it at a point where we can get a bid from construction company?
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's only. My last question is, can you refresh our memory, the total cost for the expansion and the renovation of the building for the Garfield location, and as compared to this bid?
If you look on page, what page is it, Dean?
I missed it.
Is it 35, Dennis?
Is it page 35? I don't think.
No, that's the new.
No.
I believe, Jerry, on page 35, we have the revised estimated project cost.
Oh, yeah, 3.4 million.
I have copies. Jerry Pugh, Finance and
that's right.
Administrative Services, Director of the Health Department. I do have copies of that original proposal that I can pass out to everybody.
But on page 35, Jerry, that's, when it says total original estimated project, that's the remodeling at Lafreniere.
Right, that is the total
And
cost.
this is on
the
page 35.
$3,500,000.
And if you look at the number on page 35, the second one, revised estimate, that's this new building at Lafreniere. So the top number is the remodel at Garfield. The second number is the new building at Lafreniere.
Okay, because the title was, I didn't grab the title.
Again,
it's not clear.
For anyone who doesn't have access to our numbers, the remodel cost for Garfield is estimated at, in round numbers, $3.5 million. And the new project on Lafreniere, we're talking about $6.2 million in round numbers.
Correct.
And that is inclusive of the cost of the dental clinic and the equipment as well.
All right.
Right, there also is there's all the site improvements to bring in the utilities for that. The development.
It's one of the reasons the building on Lafreniere would be more expensive.
Right. Correct. The site work
Fred.
was much more substantial and.
Of course. Yes, I'm sorry, Jason.
In terms of project cost overruns, what's more likely to run into snags and additional expense of a major nature? Would it be one that you're retrofitting a building, or would it be a new build?
It would absolutely be a retrofit project, would have more chance of having unforeseen conditions. Generally speaking, new construction, you're going to run into, after the site work, you're kind of, and get out of the ground, then you generally won't have any, I mean, there's always going to be something that may come up, but certainly when you're opening up walls, opening up existing conditions, it's going to be obviously more.
As a part of this $3.5 million in the old, retrofitting the old building, as a part of that planning for contingency, or is that's pretty much as you see it, that's what it's going to cost, unless we run into something, then it's going to be more?
There was a line item for contingency, I believe, included in the estimate that you have in front of you.
There's also a line item in the, for the new.
Is that, Ray, is it, how much, 5?
It's usually 5% of the hard costs.
Correct.
Is that for the remodel as well? Typically, we put more in a remodel contingency, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, and on that, I don't have that one in front of me, Dennis.
It shows 312,000 fees and contingency.
Did it have a percentage in there?
No, it doesn't show a percentage.
Well, that's about 10%.
Yeah, it's about 10, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it's 7.5 or 8. That's my
But it
guess.
also shows $582,000 allocated to upgrade the mechanicals in the existing, and you won't get it there.
So we did have a higher contingency indicated in that existing facility. And again, these are very preliminary numbers. We would hope that based on a number of factors, the construction climate, et cetera, the size of the project, it would be less than what we're estimating there. We're just trying to give conservative numbers.
And in terms of a lifespan of the old building being retrofitted, before something has to be done the next time around, how many years? I mean, what kind of service are we expecting out of that?
I would expect 20 years, 20 to 25 years.
And then with the new build?
I think that we'd be looking at probably 30 to 40 years. Mechanical systems are going to have a life cycle in either case that are going to be less. Both the existing buildings fairly well constructed in terms of being concrete block and that sort of thing. It's a little bit more difficult to get in there and to do retrofit insulation and energy upgrades on some of the exterior envelope as compared to what we would be able to do with new construction. So that's where I would think you would see the benefit of the life cycle cost, which would also translate into operational cost as well. So when we do energy upgrades in environmentally correct building techniques, we're going to see enhancements as far as the actual operational cost of the building. As an example, we had a line item in there for geothermal heating, for example. That's going to be certainly much more efficient and less cost to operate compared to anything we'd be able to do at the Garfield Road facility, as an example. So,
Herb, did you have something?
Yeah. We had some experience in remodeling an old building when we redid the court.
Oh, yeah.
What was the cost overruns for that?
I can't tell you for sure, but I think they actually came in under.
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was including the two, but of course, that was two small
facilities.
Churches. It wasn't a huge remodel.
But we did have some. The other question I have is two options here that I see is that whether or not we go out for bid to be able to bid this, to be able to figure out what the real true cost is, or whether or not we can go out and do a design build. I know we've had some history in design builds, but I really think that this is a golden opportunity with the economy the way it is, that we would be really wise in looking at doing a design build. I was involved with the Northern Lakes Community Mental Health Building when we did that, and the best thing we did was put in a clerk of the works, which was, and I'm sure Danny accesses that already on our staff, so we wouldn't really have to go out and do that. But it's just one of those opportunities, I think, that we need to decide what kind of a motion we would really want to have, whether we go out for a bid for the specs that have been presented here, or whether we go out for a bid to do a design and build.
Well, I guess it's my recollection that what brought us to this point to look at a new building and look at the Lafreniere site was the discussion first brought up by Commissioner Fleece about the charter building and the possibility of building a rectangular building in this similar square footage and trying to retrofit all the components they're looking for in that size of a building at that location. And there was a representation by a construction company that they could do it for the same cost as the Lafreniere site. And that's what led us to this point. And I guess my question is, is there an assumption that the square footage that we looked at the charter building, for example, or the other building at the park there, the industrial park, what's different? Is that in the same square footage area? And what is different? What is the difference between what they cite as a $3.5 million building and what we see as a $6.2 million building?
Well, if I could give a stab at that, I think and this is rough numbers, I think their cost was more along the lines of 2.2 or 2.3, which is why it was initially attractive.
It was, I have notes here, it was $2,400,000, but then we rolled in the dental equipment and some other things that came to 2.721 or $2.7 million. But it was still about
7,000 square feet less,
7,000 square feet less. So, it isn't apples to apples, but it was still, I guess if you rolled that in there, it was still less than 6 and closer to the redesign.
But to refresh your memory, staff's analysis as well as Ray's analysis was that quality of that building was not anywhere near the quality of what we're talking about here.
That's why I'm giving an assumption.
And so that's why we didn't recommend that option. They would still have the right to bid, I guess, if they could do that kind of quality construction. It might not be apples to apples, but they would still have that right to bid that. I did want to add also that in our previous discussion, just so the board has to refresh your memory, the staff, along with Ray, we don't believe a design build. We don't believe a design build is what we'd recommend. We'd rather see us go out and bid this project and manage it as a normal project as opposed to design build. But I just wanted to refresh your memory on that.
Bob?
Has there been any calculations on differences in efficiencies over time? It's going to be a lot cheaper to heat and cool a new building versus an old building, I would assume.
Absolutely, and that's where, again, with the ability to upgrade insulation and do things during construction as opposed to trying to do it with a retrofit will certainly be easy, and that will translate into energy efficiency and improved cost of the operation of the facility. And the other thing with the new building versus the existing is also efficiency of operation, the floor plan, relationship of departments to each other, security, how people would be able to approach the building. There was a lot of functional things we felt really good about the plan we had worked through actually with Fred's people at the Garfield site, but obviously when you have the opportunity to work on a clean slate, there's a lot of benefit as far as operations go, and I would say that I think the new plan was certainly more attractive to you from relationships of nurses to clinical areas and those sorts of things. So
are you saying that efficiency-wise, the retrofitted existing building would be just as efficient as a brand-new building?
No, I'm saying the new construction would be much more efficient, both energy efficient-wise and efficiency of operation in terms of people, plan, and so forth. So,
but we haven't done any putting numbers to that. We don't know.
As far as running energy models, we have not run energy models. When we were looking at the existing facility, we were contemplating LEED certification on the project, and if we did pursue LEED certification, we would be doing energy models, and that is something that we could look at doing if it was requested to have energy models ran of both designs and kind of give a feel for the operations. But again, by doing things like the geothermal that we were talking about at the new site, you won't be comparing apples to apples, so you'll see some pretty significant savings operationally because of the different types of systems we'd be able to bring to a new structure. So,
do we know how much we spend on energy right now?
We do. I don't have those numbers with me. Do you, Danny? But it is one of our, I want to say it's our third most inefficient building? Third or fourth least efficient building.
Yeah,
but that's out of like 7 or 8 buildings, so it's not bad. It's not bad. It's not one of our worst buildings.
How much of the retrofitting the old building, how much of that, are you talking about upgrading HVAC systems? Are you talking about new systems?
There would be completely new systems in that building as well, but again, we didn't have the site area to be able to necessarily look at doing things like geothermal as an example.
So new mechanicals, but using existing flues, ducts, et cetera, as much as possible?
There would be new air handling units and so forth that would be added. So it'd be using the existing ductwork in some instances. We might have some new areas of ductwork, but primarily the benefit and the cost difference between the two structures, obviously there's a lot of existing walls that we're trying to take advantage of and existing facilities that we're using in the existing structure. So that's where some of that cost difference certainly lies in the fact that there's a lot of existing that we were trying to work with.
Dean, I had a couple of questions. I'm sorry, Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
I see estimates on here. Where do you get your numbers? This hasn't been bid out, so I'm just wondering.
Just from past projects that we've bid in the last year or two, we're trying to take, we do schoolwork and some different other types of projects, so we have a good sense. We talk to some contractors that we work with and try to get a feel for different components of the project. Our mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, same way, they have experience with buildings that they've bid recently, so we're taking that data and trying to get the best estimate as to what we're seeing out there.
Okay, so these aren't like national statistics for square foot or anything like that?
No, we're trying to use local numbers from recent projects. And we know we just have bid, in the last several months, we've bid geothermal projects, so we're able to take pretty real numbers as far as, taking the scale of a project and rising it to what we have here, for example.
And Dennis, you had mentioned this is a quality building versus a lesser quality building. Could you expand on exactly what you mean?
Basically, as it was explained to me, the other building was primarily a steel building with a brick veneer on the outside. In discussing this with Ray, we find it hard to believe that the mechanical equipment would be of the same quality as what we talk about in this building for extending life of the building. So those are a couple of the things. We're concerned about the quality of the carpeting, the wall applications, and we just don't think it's going to be the same quality that'll last the same length of time. We think we'll be in there doing remodeling much more quickly. It also doesn't take into account things like where we feel in high traffic areas we would like to put in the rubber floors like we do at the Civic Center in the building that's proposed. It's just, regular grade carpet, which will need to be replaced every 4, 5, 6 years. So those are the kinds of things we're talking about.
And some of it
But we never got any real particulars, so that was the difficulty in trying to make a real comparison.
And there's a substantial amount of plumbing and mechanical work that's associated with critical spaces. There's sinks in many of the rooms, so those are some of the things that we're not looking at in apples to apples, as somebody mentioned.
But Ray, in fairness, I think somebody from that group made a comment that would only cost about an extra $25,000 for putting in the plumbing for the clinic. Personally, I think that's not. I can't believe that's all that would cost, but I don't know.
Wait a minute, Jason. I have a question, then you can be next. Dean, first of all, on the assumption from the bond council, what percentage was used as an assumption?
Well, we did not go back out and request our bond counsel to run what the debt service would be.
Right.
We had a limited amount of time, so we took the debt service that they had originally quoted us, and based on the fact that the project cost was 178% more, we just grew or projected the debt service at 178% of what we were.
Do you know what percentage rate bond council used for the first
I don't
project?
recall. Jerry may
remember?
have some of that
I
information
thought it
with
was
him.
3.5%, Commissioner.
I would guess it would be 3.5% to 4.5% over the life of the bonds.
And that was done over a 20-year? 20-year? Is it ever possible to do longer than 20 years?
I'll
or?
defer that. It is possible to go longer, but I want Jerry to answer the other question to be sure we have it right.
Do you have that, Jerry?
Yeah,
You could go 25.
You could go 30.
You could go 30, not longer.
I don't have my sheet where I had actually done the computation. The coupons on the bonds run from 2% to 4.4% over the 20-year period, and my recollection is that worked out to about 3.5%.
And to answer your other question, you can go 25 years, you can go 30 years, you just have to be able to show, reasonable depreciation on that. This county has always been much more conservative than that, and I don't ever remember a bond issue going over 20. That's the way this county has looked at it.
Okay. And then, Dean, on page 37, I believe, so the number in the right-hand column is the money beyond what was projected from dental clinic and the payments on the remodel of the existing building.
Correct, correct. Jerry is the architect of all of the financial information, but I did review it, and yes, that column shows the amount that we're short after the dental clinic payments, which are the fixed amounts at $100,000 per year, and then the rent that the health department would pay. So by year, we're indicating the amount that we're short.
Okay.
Also, just a couple of other notes. Remember, when you first started this discussion of new building versus old building, there was another component, and that was selling the existing building. And I know that you received some estimates of $750,000. I think that's high. I don't think we're going to get that kind of a price for that building, but you have to take that into consideration. Whatever we sell the building for brings this bond cost down. And there was one other aspect to this project that, this does not include the potential for the grants that we have out there. We're working on a Homeland Security grant. Are we still working on the grant from the state through State Health? That was about $99,000, $98,000. So there are a couple grants out there that would affect either of these projects if we were successful.
Okay. And Fred, is there any concern about, longevity of the dental clinic as a paying customer?
Oh, they were willing to give a 20-year commitment.
Oh, really? Okay.
So
There's always that concern, Commissioner, because they could break that. But, I think from everything we're seeing, that's one area that the state's going to leave alone, and they are willing to do the 20-year commitment, which Fred negotiated.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
My questions have been answered, thank you.
Oh, all right.
Could you refresh me on the differential on the annual debt service? Just the annual debt service? Between the Garfield and the Lafreniere. Was it 200 and some thousand annual payment on the current building?
Do you remember the numbers?
I believe it was approximately equal to the rent, but maybe Jerry has, and that bond issue has been paid off. We paid that off in October.
No, I think you mean, Commissioner, remodeling the existing building versus new.
The rationale behind remodeling the existing building was the dollar amount amortized over 20 years was the same payment we were paying, so.
Right. It would require no additional money.
No additional money from the current budget cycle.
That's correct.
So what would be the increase?
About $100,000.
$100,000.
We have about a $100,000 difference here, correct?
Differential? Annually?
Yeah, approximately $100,000 plus the cost of the utilities. When I did the original estimates on the remodel of the health services building, I was able to throw in the financing plus the utilities and basically paying facilities costs, which really is not part of our rent. That's an additional cost that comes back through our indirect costs. We were able to pay both of those. So you're probably looking at an additional cost of $180,000
$180?
a year. Right, if you were to compare apples to apples.
Well, I have to ask you, Jerry, explain that a little bit, because if Ray says the new building's going to be more efficient.
And no numbers, though.
If I'm assuming that the utility costs at the Lafreniere site were identical to the health services building.
Okay.
One thing that we tentatively negotiated with the dental clinic is that they would be responsible for their own utilities at the new site.
Okay.
So, I mean, the utilities at Lafreniere could be significantly less, whether that's $10,000 or...
I want to make sure we give good information to the board. Is it fair to say that, as the question was asked, that if we remodeled at the existing site, you would be able to cover the cost, we'd be able to cover the cost of the bond issue and the utilities.
Right.
And so the difference between the two is the difference in the cost of utilities at the new facility plus the additional cost of the building.
Correct.
Okay, so, and we don't have those numbers.
All right,
We haven't run
so-
those economic models.
All right, because, I was going to make a point, if the assumption was the total differential was $100,000 annually.
A year, yeah.
And with a 37, whatever our budget's going to be for moving forward, $100,000 out of a $38 million budget, it seems to me that we would, in the long run, be better off with the new building as a percentage of our total budget, spending $100,000 more and having a brand-new facility and trying to sell the older one. I mean, as a percentage of the differential of the budget.
The answer to that question is really quite simple. You are right. If the board is committed to spending that $100,000 towards a new building and cutting it somewhere else.
Right.
Then the answer is, yeah, sure.
Okay.
As far as operational costs, the older building is somewhat of a maze as it is. And then the expansion, if I recall the discussions, and this was of course prior to my joining the board, didn't really alleviate that too much. From an operational standpoint, could you service more people? Could you help more people given the same staff resources in the new, with the new consideration versus remodel of the old? I mean,
well, I think that in look at this, we want to try to be reasonable as to what we're going to have in there. And reasonable means the possibility of expanding services more or adding additional services, but not to have a lot of empty areas. So it's kind of a balancing act. But we did try to build and have more capacity. One of the problems that he really addressed well in his design that Ray did is that there's a front entrance and there's a rear entrance, but clients can come in from either side. They could actually park in the back parking lot.
Right.
So there's kind of a centralized intake area in the center. We don't have that now, and there's an inefficiency there that we actually takes a little more clerical staff just to receive people, or people wandering around trying to find which door to go to or to get services. So that was one of the things that there's a true improvement with this new design is to get them in there. We also, we have, the design has a nice flow to it, so if we did that like mass immunizations or large clinics, that we could make the flow through the clinic a lot easier in some of the public areas. There's some other sides to it, is the EOC is like really oversized, but it's basement, and it's relatively cheap to fix that up. And so that does open up for potential public meeting areas and so forth. One thing that's not in here, and maybe a red herring to bring it up, is we were approached by the Children's Advocacy Center also about cohabitating with that. And there's that potential in that structure to be able to do that. I mean, it wouldn't have to be a larger footprint. It would be just consolidating some areas in the lower level. But there's that potential too, but I don't know how real that is, because they have to make a decision as whether they think that that's a suitable cohabitation or not. But that would be, it does open up that idea though, that if there was another agencies that wanted to be in there, that there's some excess there that we could probably absorb that. Yes.
Thank you. Going back to the design build, I guess my question is what is the additional cost to our staff, or what would we have to go through in a process to be able to do that? What's the differences in our work for our staff to be able to do, or your staff to be able to do a design build in comparison to just going out for a bid and using Ray as the architect?
That's the answer to me.
Whoever can answer
Ray,
that, whether
I'd
it's
like you to
Danny
try to
or...
address that.
I
Could you?
mean,
Are you comfortable
the truth is
addressing that? I'd like Ray to do that if you don't mind.
Okay.
Well, I guess the biggest difference is with the design build is I think that even if you go design build, you would need to provide a very thorough specification and program outlined so that you would have something to compare apples to apples to again, because if you just went out and said, take this floor plan or the work we've done and build it, there'd be too many ambiguities and things that would need to be worked through, and it'd be nearly impossible for you to truly take a series of proposals, I guess they would be, that came to you to analyze. So I would suggest that if it was something that was seriously being considered, that still a fair amount of work would need to occur to create that specification properly to make that process run smoothly. The other issues that you run into, in particular with design build, is that you don't have anybody, you would have somebody, potentially a clerk of the works like Danny, for example, overseeing a project, but the scope and scale of this building, I would have concern, I guess, advising that that would be a situation where you're not getting the same sort of oversight. Again, the comparison between the two processes are not the same, because with the specifications, we provide a thorough specification that they have to meet, whereas in a design-build process, potentially, they can be looking at different products through construction, ways to save money, things of that nature, and I guess that would be the cautions that I would have in that regard. There's numerous other situations. We personally have been involved in design-build before, but we would recommend to our clients that we don't do that generally, because we've ran into more problems down the line. We've had problems with mechanical systems and design-build projects, because again, the accountability is not there to the design team having to specify everything out and having multiple companies bid a project. You know, in a bid spec, we're certainly going to get, every trade will have, 5 to 10 different companies at least in this climate looking at the project. We had a smaller project that we did for Antrim County recently, and it was a $500,000 project. We had 13 contractors bid that project. So I would assume a project of this scale, we would have a significant amount of interest as well. So again, we would hope that that would reflect positively in numbers that came back.
So Commissioner, in addition to having something less than bid specs, but something more than general description, then I would probably recommend to you that we would ramp up the use of our building department in the inspection process to give us kind of an on-site oversight of what's going on. That was something that was lacking from the septic treatment plant, for example. And I would probably still have Danny, at the weekly meetings to make sure that, things are moving along in the manner they're supposed to. But probably one thing that we haven't done in the past that I would recommend is I'd ask our building department to be more of help us as a clerk of the works as we went through that process. So I'd do that just to be safe.
Utilize the skills that we have available to us.
Yep.
And we've even in instances acted on behalf of an owner still to be that third-party person if you truly were going to go that route. We did it on the Old Town parking deck for the city of Traverse City. We were hired to act as a clerk of the works for them and oversee the project too, because it's kind of the situation where you've got to be able to make somebody accountable. And with a bid spec, a traditional bid spec system that we typically would recommend, we have complete control over that, where contractors aren't able to come in, they can't switch things, they can't switch the spec. There's somebody looking over their shoulder who's working for you, not for them, who's calling the shots as far as the specification of materials. That's the biggest situation.
With the recommendations from our staff and with our architects, I would like to make a motion that we go out for bids for the new facility on Lafreniere.
Second.
Sonny?
Yeah, I will support the motion because I think this is the right thing to do. I am not quite sure where we figure out how to pay for it.
Well,
I am not. I've been around a lot of construction sites in the last 45 years, and I will tell you that design builds work primarily on smaller projects. Projects of this size, they will usually come back and bite you, just because there's too much detail that none of us have the opportunity or the expertise to try to evaluate. It can be something as simple as, I can save you $10,000 or $20,000 by putting 15 amp circuits in your clinical rooms instead of 20s, But the first thing you do is you go to put an exam light in there and you plug it in there and you pop the circuit breakers, because you don't have enough power. I deal with that daily. I have some portable 110-volt equipment that I take to job sites all over, and I plug it into the wall, and it doesn't work. I end up running it off my generator on my truck because it just doesn't work plugging it into the buildings.
Your stuff is all shorted out.
What's that?
Your stuff is all shorted out.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't hope so. I hope not. It's not my old brand new. But the point is, I really think, and I don't know where we find $100,000 a year. I really don't. But I think somewhere, I had pretty well established that number was going to come in that 4.2 million thing. I'm kind of surprised to see the 6.2 million, although I know that the $500,000 for the dental equipment has been added into that 6.2. And that was a number that we did not consider when we talked about the number before. We talked about strictly the cost of the building.
Well, there's $500,000 in
There's a $500,000 in site
infrastructure,
work,
yeah.
and there's a $500,000 in dental equipment that was not included in the numbers when we talked about them at the ad hoc meeting, but they are in this number here.
Yeah.
So, but one thing I think we want to think about a lot is make sure that we minimize the site work on this project to this building. Let's not get all carried away with designing a roadway and putting in oversized sewer because we may want to put a jail back there. We can tie into that public sewer at any time and run a sewer line back to handle the jail. We do not have to oversize the infrastructure to this facility because we may eventually want to build a jail behind it or another facility behind it. You can tie into that public sewer every 8 feet. 8 feet, 10 feet, they'll allow you to tie them together. So, I'm not concerned about making sure that we provide enough infrastructure to provide to the back half of that building in any part of this construction.
The only other comment I was going to make on this, whether or not it becomes a separate part of the motion or whatever, but we only use local contractors with local employees. It would be my recommendation. I would hope that we would get lots of support with that.
That discussion would have to be done when you get the
I wouldn't
bids.
put it, I don't want to
You'd
put
have
the
to look at the
motion, but I
bids.
just want to.
Well,
You determine that when you get the bids.
Yeah.
you do that when you open the bids.
Okay.
If I could comment on that as well, we did, at the Old Town Parking Deck, we requested that the contractors provide in their bid form a percentage of what content was local, and that was very helpful for the commissioners to be able to analyze.
We're going to want to do that here too, Rick.
At least a list of the subcontractors so that we can identify them.
Well, I think if we're looking for the most benefit for the county and the citizens in this county in terms of providing services, I think in the long run, we would be better off having a new facility rather than retrofitting a building. Basically, we've got to just gut out, and the footprint of that building is not, in my opinion, not user-friendly. And I think the other thing is that, for the differential of $100,000, which is basically our annual contingency from year to year, I think that we over time, we would be better suited to have a newer building with, as Rob indicated, better efficiencies in terms of utilities and those kinds of things. But we have to remember that the county board back, 15, 18 years ago had enough foresight to acquire that land, additional 20 acres on top of the administrative building up there, solely for the purpose of, at that time, was to plan the future new building of the health department and the possibility of a new sheriff's department and jail up there. So it's consistent with, the direction of the past boards.
Rob?
Clarification, Herb, is your motion to go out for design build?
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion?
The recommendation was from staff and from our architect that we not go out for design build, but go out for doing a bid for the building on Lafreniere.
Okay, so we would, our architect would have to finalize some specs.
Specifications.
And then go out.
Even if you were going to do a design build, you would have
You
to
still
do
have to do that.
You'd have to fill
significant
that
work
thing.
from where we
Yeah,
are
yeah.
to even have the possibility of comparing apples to apples in a design build.
So that it's clear to the board, what we'd be talking about here is, we will go back, if this motion passes, and we will do the design, the bid specifications, and take it out to bid.
Yep.
Bring you back the results. We can have more discussion in between of things like, we want to see a detail of all the bidders, if they're local or whatever. We can have that detail as Ray's working on this. And then I would say once we get the bids back in and we know we'd be moving forward, then would be the time to start beginning the discussions of marketing the existing building and trying to do something with the existing building. And in the meantime, we should have better ideas, I would think, on some of these grant applications that we have out there. So maybe we'll have some extra money. We already have $95,000 or $98,000 for the generator, which would work at our existing building. So, hopefully we'll be successful at that as well. So, and then if it's okay with the board, I don't know if this needs to be part of the motion. I would like, as Rob suggested, I would like to have Ray do the energy modeling on the new building so we could do some comparison with what our current utility costs are.
Right.
Because there could be a substantial savings there that would help offset some of this $100,000 a year.
I like it.
So if it's okay, I'd like to do that.
Ray, what will it cost us to get to that point? Roughly.
To the bids or to the energy modeling?
Energy modeling.
They're usually, I can find out tomorrow, but I think it'd be less than $5,000. And we were actually approximately $5,000 under the previously allocated budget for going forward with the schematic design, so I think that would tie in.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm ready to call the motion then?
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Henschel.
Yes.
Inman.
Yes.
Lemko.
Yes.
Maxbauer.
No.
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman.
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now, we have the MSU extension.
Katie? Danny's not leaving, is he?
That's still the right thing to do. If we can pay for it. We'd have to have it. If we need the services, and the demands for those services are going to continue to increase.
Good evening. I'm Patrick Cudney, the District Coordinator for Michigan State University Extension, and with me tonight is Dr. Stephen Miller. Dr. Miller's an economist down at Michigan State University, and he's joining me this evening because there were some questions following our last meeting regarding some of the content that we had provided, and it was my hope to provide clarity for the Board of Commissioners on the economic impact study that I presented to you. So I'm going to defer some of my time at the beginning to Dr. Miller to quickly present on his study and answer any questions that you have. Then I'll come back to some of the additional documents that I provided for the meeting and the discussion tonight. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, my name is Steve Miller, and I'm the director for the Center for Economic Analysis at Michigan State University. The center mandates at the university is to conduct economic impact statements, economic analysis for research, and economic analysis for state and local government units. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the approach used for estimating the economic impact of Michigan State University Extension at the state level. If it pleases the Commission, I'll start out with an overall broad view of the economic assessment method, and then look at how the numbers were generated behind that assessment. So if everyone would turn to page 44, I think there's a schematic that really kind of puts to light the methodology here and shows that each investment component builds on other components. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to build something that is very structured, an economic assessment model that's very structured and very transparent. And this is what we have here. We start out with just the state level appropriations, and from that, as was discussed a little bit earlier today, there's federal match that goes with that. Not only with federal match that's mandated under the Morrill Act, there's also contracts and grants that are generated from research that's generated through extension. Can be nonprofit, could be federal government, could be other sources. They're just coming out of the state, outside of the state coffers that go into the impact. So we add the state appropriations and that leverage funding that's generated through MSU Extension and federal government cost share, and that creates a basis for our impact beyond that point. And then we look at what is the community impact, and the community impact entails a lot of different types of impacts. It can entail productivity impacts to agricultural farmers that's increasing productivity or decreasing the cost of inputs into the production process. It could be the family that's not facing a foreclosure, or it could be the expanded food and nutrition education program that educates households on how to eat more efficiently within their budget. Whatever the program may be, there's a social benefit, and some of them are very easily monetized, some are not. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But we estimate that based on a ratio of what is the cost of the program, what is the economic return. And that ratio then is a multiple of the initial investment. And once we multiply that out, what we end up with is a new basis that entails the direct investment of the state, direct investment of federal governments and grants and contracts that are generated, the impact to producers and households in cost savings or additional economic value that's generated, and we multiply that by what's called an economic multiplier. It's, once again, another multiplier. Now, the economic multiplier is a process in economics. It's really kind of the foundation of economics, and it's been the model used in this process has been around since 1940. And through that economic impact multiplier, once again, we multiply from the new basis, multiply that out, and we get a statewide holistic economic impact. Now, it seems really nice and easy and kind of clear but there's a lot of work that actually went into this. As we pointed out, it's just the model is just a building up of multipliers. But the investment doesn't take place in 1 year. The impact doesn't happen the same year the investment's made. The impacts happen over time. The 4-H program, the impact occurs over time, or the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program. The savings may accrue to the state because of reduction in Medicare or Medicaid expenditures to low-income households through foodborne diseases or diet-borne diseases. So even though the model is very succinct, we had to estimate what those economic impacts are. So first we start out with the state investment. That's pretty easy to establish. It's really kind of established every year, fairly visible. The federal investment into the program is also fairly visible, except there's a lot of contracts and grants that are generated. Now, the contracts and grants can be generated by a combination of MSU Extension researchers and educators and non-MSU Extension researchers and educators, in which case we extrapolate the percent of the contract won by the number of researchers on the program that are MSU Extension, so that we're not counting the other component of MSU effort onto the leverage funds. So we take all that for the year, and then we move the next step further. And that's our basis, and it's really kind of accounting. Moving forward, the next part is a little bit more challenging, because here we're trying to estimate how families, producers, businesses, governments are benefited from MSU Extension programs. Not all of them are easy to put a number to. What we've done is we've gone through Extension is really good about asking researchers to quantify the impacts. And each year, those researchers have to submit a report on their funded research. Well, what are the economic impacts? What are the implications? And MSU Extension is really somewhat leading in the area of making sure there's impacts associated with projects, but not all projects do come out with impacts. Those projects that do come out with impacts in their annual report, we take those and we look at how much was invested in that research. And we look at what the potential economic impact is. And we look at all those and we extrapolate it across the full budget, those impacts. So basically an average return of those investments. And that constitutes our multiplier that we use for our community impact multiplier. The economic impact multiplier is a very well-established model here in Michigan that's used. It's called economic, oh my gosh, where's my head? Let's see, implant. The impact, I forget what it stands for, gosh, but nonetheless, the model name is implant. And it uses Michigan data to build up a model. And through that model, it generates a multiplicative relationship that represents the ripple effects that an initial infusion of economic activity in the state would have on other sectors of the economy. The idea is that if the auto sector increases its production of cars, it's going to increase the demand for car radios, dashboard equipment, leather products, many of these products being made in Michigan. The sale of one car generates a new demand for all those input products. The new demand for those input products also require inputs to their products. And that is a ripple effect that goes through the economy. $1 invested in Michigan, one new dollar in Michigan, generates more than $1 of economic activity. It's a fairly well-known fact. So this ripple effect is accounted for within the economic impact model. So if we look at the numbers, I don't know if we really need to look at the numbers, or have I presented enough at this point, or do we need to look a little bit further?
For me.
Larry?
Mr. Chairman, just to get the ball rolling, I'd like to make a motion that Grand Traverse County reaffirms the longstanding partnership between MSU Extension and Grand Traverse County, and that we approve the agreement as provided in our packet, which is a 5-year agreement with an annual negotiated funding arrangement as clarified in the annual work plan.
Support. Jason?
I've got a lot of questions. Ripple. If I don't go broke, my creditor doesn't go broke, his creditors don't go broke, so on and so forth. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. Almost consistent with just about anything anybody does. Just so I can get a basis for some of my other questions here. You say that the approach draws and methodologies that are established in the economic literature dating back to the 50s, several decades. When you talk about the combined state and federal appropriations, okay, and you're talking about $1, are you talking dollars of federal and state appropriations, or federal state appropriations as well as county appropriations when you're talking about these dollars? Have you calculated for the county input in this?
Right. It's a good question. Actually, if we look at this, the numbers that were presented to you, it's really from a state basis. So the contracts and grants, also county monies go into that. So when we're looking at the state appropriations, we're looking very specifically at state investment and extension, not county investment.
Okay, so you're talking about high-level research with the university and the projects that are an extension from that research.
Not necessarily research, but also the programs.
The programs themselves, okay. And those would, of course, be part of the extensions. So that doesn't necessarily include the cost basis from the counties.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so I tend to, I mean, there's no question in my mind that we all benefit from extension type services, or we all benefit from education in any event. One way, whichever way it comes, whether it be from MSU or whether it be from private sources, whether it be from an investment by the farmers themselves, if that were necessary, we all benefit from it. And we probably pay a couple dollars less in our grocery bill because there are efficient ways that they're using to grow their food or to produce it or to preserve it. And this comes about with all this process. And I have had some discussions with our local extension officer, Duke really has helped me see a lot of things a little more clearly. Some of the things in your assessment, your study, you say community impacts are likely to accumulate over time. Okay, that is, community benefits experienced today are combined results of programs funded today and programs funded in years past. So cumulative results, we create a healthy community, and later on it costs us less. That's right. I'm assuming that. Okay. It says, while several studies have documented the rates of return to agricultural extension, these studies are not fungible to the complete MSUE Ag Bio research system, as these programs touch on many topic areas that no systematic research that has been applied to for estimating the community impacts. Which parts are not estimable? Which parts do you not are not able to quantify?
As in which programs specifically?
You said that some of them you can't quantify, essentially, is what you're saying, if I'm reading this correctly.
Right, some of them are very difficult to quantify. I think everything's quantifiable. The question becomes, how much of your research investment do you want to put towards programs and research, and how much do you want to invest in quantifying the outcomes of those? There is a balance that one has to look at. Some programs are much more difficult to quantify. Case in point would be the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program. The reason I point this out is because this is a research project that I'm currently working on, trying to understand exactly how would we estimate such an impact. Now, certain researchers out of Virginia have looked at this project, and we want to take a look at it a little bit further here in Michigan and document how behavior changes accrue over time and how long those behavior changes last after the education. If the behaviors don't last after the education, then there's no real impact. However, if an individual changes their diet behavior at a younger age, they're surely going to be much more healthy at an older age. And we want to take a look at that.
So as a part of this, then, what you're saying is you're still kind of including those things, but you're not really, you're kind of estimating for the remainder that you can't know for sure, based on some of the other. Okay.
As I pointed out, I believe, and just to make sure we're clear, what we did is go through the economic reports of past years and looked at the research projects, what we're investing in it, and those research projects had provided us an estimate of the return. We used that as the basis of a multiplier. So there were some that were in there that did not report a return. We couldn't really estimate what.
And that brings me to my next question. You have the project managers, the project people, the people who are working on these programs, and they are in the employ, or they're employed or paid for by the university or by their program. Mm-hmm. And you're asking them, hey, how you doing? And they're going, hey, we're doing great. Is that kind of what it is? I mean, or no. This is our impact?
No. Many of the impact statements come out in a peer-reviewed journal. Some of them may not. I can't vouch for which ones actually did come out in a peer-reviewed journal.
So there is a way to verify the results of, I mean, they just can't make up numbers? Or.
Oh, yeah. Just kind of like what we're here discussing right now. I couldn't make up the numbers just out of thin air. We want to be able to defend those numbers.
All right. You mentioned in this, and I know that you said that you kind of, you implied that you cut and paste from another program as far as Massachusetts. You mentioned Massachusetts. Was that just an error?
Actually, I was describing to Massachusetts, that was a paragraph lifted from a description or a letter to Massachusetts that I had written explaining to them how they may go about.
When you're utilizing your M-Plan 2.0 model, is there any similarities to Massachusetts, or is it a separate environment altogether as far as your data sets?
Data sets would be different. Massachusetts would probably have an M-Plan model that they could use. However, that's only one component of the economic impact assessment.
Okay. Greater economic efficiency of ag producers. All right. The dollar impact being used. Is that money in the pocket of our taxpayers directly? Or in other words, if we spent a dollar on the government side and over time, on the original sheet that I questioned Mr. Cudney about, references $17 in the end for every dollar invested. Is that $17 that, for every dollar spent, $17 that the taxpayer saves?
No, actually, that would be a fiscal analysis. It represents $17 of economic activity for every $1 invested by the state.
So it's just economic activity?
Right.
Okay.
A dollar doesn't stay in my wallet very long.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Now, this is the last thing. I mean, I've actually got a couple things, but I mean, this is one thing that really stands out. And I'm going to read this entire paragraph. And I can almost let it stand on its own, but the most commonly mentioned concern, and this is in your explanation, the most commonly mentioned concern about the use of economic impact multipliers, as we have used them here, is that the state appropriations would have been applied to other government expenditures in the absence of appropriations to MSUE and Ag Bio Research. We do not net out the difference. Another concern that has been mentioned is that MSUE and Ag Bio Research and programs may crowd out private investment in the same had MSUE, Ag Bio Research and programs not been in place. We also do not attempt to net out this displacement. So we are careful to note that these calculations provide an attempt to measure the contribution of state appropriations to economic outcomes, rather than a true economic impact statement that should take into consideration opportunities foregone, alternate uses of state funds and private substitutions of services. So no consideration in this study has been made as to the true value of the study or as to the true value of the program, and no consideration is made to the true value of the social program, with consideration given to both public and private alternatives. In other words, if we didn't spend the money, we spent it another way, would we have a better result? And that is not at all in here.
Well, I don't think it lends itself to the statement you just made. I think that's an unfair assessment. That how did you put that again?
I read what you put in here.
Yeah. No.
You said we do not net out the distance. You do not add in the cost.
Right.
You're giving us the benefit.
Yeah.
But you're not at all comparing it to a situation sans the programs. In other words, without the programs.
Yeah. Well, but your comments that we did not attempt to put a value on the programs is just totally inaccurate. Let's put it this way. Would it be fair for me to pick out another program out of the blue and say this is the comparison program?
Well, you could present alternatives. I suppose what I'm trying to say is, what you've done is you've said, this is worth so much, okay? And when we put this side of the teeter-totter, okay? You put something else on the other side, that may be worth more.
Yeah.
There may be something,
true.
And that's what I'm trying to say. We don't know, okay? I'm not trying to say that I know what's better.
You're right. You're right.
And that's all I'm trying to point out. And one last thing, and I'll free up everybody's time here.
Well, let's go back to that real quick.
Okay.
See, that's the purpose behind these economic assessments, is to establish how much the value of this program is. And we can make that a comparison against another program. But if we say that this is the economic value as you had termed it, the economic value given the second best alternative foregone, then you have nothing to compare it to. The way that we have this report now, we can see this is how much this is worth. Now, what if I have another program that's worth this much? And then we can compare the two apples to apples. That's the purpose behind such a statement.
But right now, we're being asked to fund this program without looking at anything else, without looking at alternatives.
I think most things have been looked at out there, so there's a lot of studies and a lot of reports out there.
I guess that's the way things have been done, right?
Yeah.
All right. And since the program began, I want to ask you this. We had talked about and I understand that a lot of folks have a great deal of investment in time and energy and money into some of the programs that exist both here and around the state as far as the social work. My concern, okay, I tend to, from a traditional standpoint, have a little more sympathies towards the 4-H extension part of it. The part that encourages efficient farming methods, encourages food preservation, encourages those techniques which make our food cheap. Okay, I like cheap food. Food is a good thing. I have my concern, and the reason I ask a lot of these questions is because I'm afraid that a lot of social programs, which are, some of them I believe are being duplicated. Some may not be, but I think some are being duplicated. I believe there are social programs that are being basically held under this untouchable program, this 4-H. They're tag-alongs, and well, you can't touch 4-H. And I can tell you, judging by the folks here who've testified, they don't want us to touch 4-H. Okay, there's some great support in this community, and I understand that. And in fact, in my own district, I think it's largely, I have a large agricultural constituency. But I think we also do a disservice to that agricultural constituency if we allow these tag-alongs. And now you bring the plan to us, and it's a 5-year plan, and this is after saying that we're going to be accountable. And it's a 5-year plan. 5 years, I know some people say, well, we've had longer contracts. Well, guess what? In this day and age, we might not want to have such long contracts. I don't think it's so accountable to go to a 5-year plan. I think we need to look at these things every year, frankly. Maybe 2 years. Maybe 2 years.
Okay.
But, and the other thing is, as far as the problems we're trying to address, can we quantify the numbers of people? Is it less now than before? We don't know these things. There's really nothing that's other than something that says we multiply this. We estimate this and we've multiplied and we think we have this much, and we've not included the adverse effects on the other side of the equation. And I'll let it go from here. I've said enough. Thank you very much.
Jason, if I could address a couple of things you said. First of all, to say that we haven't touched MSU extension or 4-H, you have to understand that the appropriation for this year from the county is 20% less than it was last year. You mentioned social programs. I think one of the ones you're talking about is the Parents as Teachers program, because I know that was mentioned in the newspaper. 2 years ago, we stood over the state basically gutting the Parents as Teachers program. It went from a $250,000 a year program down to about, I don't know, was it 30 or 40,000 now? It's very small. We actually tried to save it for a couple months. Interestingly enough, Commissioner Fleece, who isn't here tonight, as a former police officer, he was the strongest advocate for the Parents as Teachers, because he said, the money we spend on that program helps little kids today stay out of the court system 10 or 15 years from now, when they're going to cost us a whole lot more money than they are right now. But the point is that program went away anyway. To say that, this whole program has been untouched is unfortunately not accurate, because I myself am a big believer in the programs, not just 4-H, but all the programs that MSU does. Because what we're mostly talking about in one form or another is education. It isn't sitting down and saying, this is how you read necessarily, or this is how you do math, but it's teaching people how to eat, how to be healthier. It's teaching them a whole range of things that they don't get anywhere else. And I think that's why it's so important that we support it.
Am I going to have to call the question to get it moving?
Well, we have public comment to put in. Chris?
If you want to have it.
That's true. We did offer public comment.
I am going to support the motion, and I want to tell you why. And primarily, from what I've seen, and what I see most is your Safe Kids program. I know hundreds of kids are taught water safety, winter safety. I have seen Jen Ritter on Front Street in front of the city fire department on a Saturday fitting kids with bike helmets. I have never seen such an impact by just one individual. And if the rest of your employees have that much impact, and I heard from one of my constituents here that you impact, the wine growers, and I heard from Mr. Hinckley, the cherry farmers, and I did say in the Record Eagle that I do not see a difference between funding 4-H versus, it's a youth program. It's a nonprofit youth program versus the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, and I really don't see. I do have a problem with government funding that particular program. I think it could stand on its own. But that being said, the rest of of what you do deserves my vote, so you have it. Or will shortly.
Well, I guess the comments that I would make is, first, the long-standing partnership that Grand Traverse County and this community has with MSU Extension has a lot more value than just our economic development pipelines. There's a lot more to this than economics. Over the years, we've sat here and we've talked about programs that we operate through our probate court programs and all of those kind of things. Ross is exactly right. This is an education thing. Whether we're teaching a kid how to make sure that he has responsibility to feed a lamb or brush a steer or whatever it is, it's an education program and it's a responsibility program. But that's the 4-H component. But the partnerships we have with our Sea Grant programs and the things that educate people how to properly maintain our waterways and protect our environment in our community. The value of that is huge. My question, and Pat and I have talked about this a little bit, this basic contract is for $84,596. All right, our current expenditure is 3 times that?
$319,000.
Yeah, almost 4 times that. So the fact is, my question is, when I talk about my appropriation countywide to MSU Extension, it's not this $85,000. This is an easy decision for me. My decision is going to be more difficult when you come back to me and we start talking about what programs that you're going to operate and how much those programs are going to cost in this community. This piece is easy. This piece is easy. But at the time when you start coming back and saying, we're going to operate the 0 to 3 program. You choose which one of the programs, and we know there's a long list. And I'm not saying that they don't all have value, but when we start looking at those individual programs, we need to be making sure what those programs cost and how many people in our community they're serving. Because that's what we have to make. Sitting in this chair, we have to decide whether those programs have enough value for the dollars for the number of people that we're serving. And, we had a discussion, here a couple years ago, Ross mentioned it earlier. We came in here in October and we appropriated $68,000 to operate a 0 to 3 program for the remainder of that year. I think it was 2009, 2008, 2009. And come to find out, it involved 36 people. Well, $68,000 for 36 people, I can't justify that in these economic times. So, this piece is easy. This $85,000 is good. But when you come back to me and ask for funding to operate programs in our community, you better be able to tell me how much those programs are going to cost and how many people they're going to serve. Okay?
Okay, well, if there's nothing else.
And just one last thing. I still, the only reason I'm going to object is because of the length at this point, and he's right. When you come back, that's going to be another discussion, and we're going to be back to some of the questions that I had essentially.
Okay.
May I have a few moments of the floor before going to public comment?
Can I just,
sorry, Rob first.
I shared Commissioner Gilman's concern, but if you really read the fine print, I review, a few contracts here and there in our business, and it's really, the term of the contract is really the length of how long it takes to get out. It's a 120-day contract. So I have that concern too, but I'm put at ease that, if we had a terrible financial time and we had to make some huge cuts, 4 months, we could be done with it.
Just other documents that were included, I want to make sure that commissioners are aware. It's obvious that a number of you have read the materials. Following Chairperson Inman's letter on May 19th asking department heads and judges and elected officials to look at this year's current operating budget, I submitted a letter that is in your packet where we were able to identify an additional $10,000 out of our current 2011 operating budget that we're going to return. Those are dollars that were going to be unspent and should be returned because that's where they belong. But in that letter, I also want to take out the opportunity to remind commissioners, as Chairperson Richardson said, that we reduced our budget by $71,838 between fiscal year 2010 and 2011. You add in this additional $10,000 and we're over $81,838 less operating on 2011 than we were in 2010. The reason that's important is we have said all along, that these changes, these adjustments, this restructuring would be cost neutral or better to county government. We started working towards these changes in 2010 moving into 2011. It's why those reductions are there. And I just want to, again, remind commissioners that we started this process some time ago. Those are real cost savings to the county, to the partnership. We've said all along we'll be part of the solution. We understand the fiscal constraints that county government and state government are facing and federal government are facing. So reference that letter, please. Another document that was included that came out of the discussion we had last time was concern over duplication of services. So in your packets, I believe it's starting on page, following Dr. Miller's summary report, it would be page 49 through page 54. These are significant programs that MSU Extension conducted or sponsored in Grand Traverse County in 2010. We listed the programs, we listed what the impact was and what the partnerships were. We also specifically said what our role was. I'm not going to read this to you. I just simply want to say that we're trying our best to answer your questions about what is duplicative and what is not. We partner. Partnerships are key to success for county government and for business and for others. We have our role in these partnerships. So please reference that document when you're concerned about duplication and forward any additional questions you have to me or any of our staff at any time. So that's a second document that was submitted as part of your packet in advance of this meeting. The last thing that was not in your packet, but it goes back to some questions about why is 4-H different? And I don't think I did a good job answering that question when it was posed at the previous board meeting. So I apologize, these are not in your packet, but we have 3 documents that talk about 4-H. And Roxanne Johnson, our 4-H staff member, is here today, and we brought copies for you tonight. And it gives some of the research base. Again, the research from university research that shows why 4-H is different. And I'm not going to get into all of that. We're late on time. I ask you to reference those documents. And again, if you have additional questions, I would be happy to answer them, or certainly Roxanne or others. So I appreciate the extra minutes tonight to be able to respond to the other items you have in your packet.
Thank you, Mr. Cudney and Dr. Miller. If you wouldn't mind just sitting back in the audience, I'm going to open up for public comment now, because I did promise it at the start of this meeting. So anyone who would like to specifically comment on the MSUE or 4-H program?
My name is Angela Walker. I don't know if you guys want my address or not. I'm a 4-H volunteer, and I only need just a couple seconds. I just want to tell you that we started a new program about 3 years ago called the Differently Abled 4-H program. We're servicing the 5 counties in the area, and what it is it's a program that we are working with special needs children. What's unique about this program is that we can actually service children up to the age of 26 with a special needs diagnosis. So that's something that's brand new to the area. We've tripled in size. Every year we double in size, and we're seeing more and more children that haven't had the opportunity to get out into the public, and particularly we use it as a livestock focus right now, where we're getting these kids involved with livestock and local farming. So it's giving special needs children a better opportunity to showcase what their abilities are, and we can service any of the special needs children in the area, from very disabled to just slightly disabled, and we customize the program for them and the education level for them. So we've been really, really excited to offer this, and if any of you guys are available to come out to the Northwestern Michigan Fair, that's where we really showcase this. And you will see the kids involved in standard shows, also in a specialized show if that's what they need. And we really, really personalize it for the special needs children in the area. But again, it's something that we can offer to them until they're 26, which is really, really spectacular. It gives some of the older kids that maybe weren't available to do 4-H as a younger child due to medical issues or cognitive impairments, they can actually still participate even up to the age of 26.
Thank you.
It's fairly quick also. What I have here is a promotional DVD for the 4-H Livestock Council. My name is Darrell Robinson. I live at 6777 Kirkman Road, Long Lake Township. And I'll pass these around if you can grab one. It's a promotional video for everyone to view and the auction brochure. The Livestock Council is a program that's run, and we have approximately 600 kids in the program. They show animals out at the fair every year. That's for age 5 to 19. The first gentleman said you guys are going to be buying services. You're not buying services when you are working with MSU. You're investing. We're investing in our youth. The kids are learning a profession that is dying. Agriculture is dying. These kids get the opportunity to work with animals, get to learn about the animals. And what we get out of MSU through 4-H is we get all the resources we need to teach these kids what the information that they can't get from other places. We have no problem calling up the offices. They can link us with other communities. And in fact, we have one of the best programs in the state based on some of the convention comments we've heard around the state. So, and that is because of our ability to link up with other areas. The leadership skills that are taught by these clubs, each club has a vice president, a president, a treasurer, a secretary. They all learn the process of government. They get to see it actually working. And through that, they get some confidence. They get to get out in the community with these buyer's letters, these DVDs and everything. They get to meet business people, shake hands with them, and actually talk with these people. And their confidence level is incredible. You should talk to some of the people at the Traverse City State Bank. They're a huge sponsor of the livestock program. And the kids are very well spoken and do a phenomenal job as far as their marketing aspects and the ability to sell themselves. So I would encourage you to continue to support a winning program like this. It's not a service you're buying; it is an investment. So thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Barbara Peters. Do you want my address?
Sure.
749 Dyer Lake Road, Traverse City.
I'm John Peters, her husband. We represent the Northwest Classic Canine Dog Club. In fact, we are the dog club. At present, we have 40 kids on our rolls with purebreds and mixed breed dogs. Our age group, 6 to 19 years age. We've been training here in Traverse City for 14 years and 25 downstate. When we moved up here, we brought it with us. Our training methods are very consistent with American Kennel Club. We had 2 years of training under the Kennel Club apprentice program. We also belong to the Grand Rapids Agility Club and the Grand Traverse Kennel Club, which we are board members. We train kids every week during the summer, on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and Saturday and maybe Sunday for special training. We teach obedience, showmanship, rally obedience, tracking, and agility. Our 4-H club consists of officers, which are 4-Hers themselves. They elect their own boards and members. They conduct the meetings. We conduct the meetings twice a year, giving them experience for years later. We offer monthly visit pavilions for resident visitation, which the kids like to do, and of course, the people at the pavilions, they like it, except they try and steal our dogs. We train 4 months of the year at the Cherryland Humane Society indoors in the winter because we can't get a facility outside. Our kids and their dogs have been walking the Junior Orion Parade with the National Cherry Festival for 12 years. This gives them plenty of opportunity to show the people they're obedient dogs. We do a demonstration every year at the Horseshoe by the Bay on Kids Giving, and it gives the kids an opportunity to show off their skills. At the Horses by the Bay, they offer us money which we take in for the club. What we do with that is that then the kids get an opportunity. We hold a workshop every year. Now, what do you want to do this year? Last year it was leashes. They built leashes. Now, this year we did the dog's paw prints in concrete, and this is what we do with the money we make. The Grand Traverse Kennel Club asks us every year to work the summer program by walking the grounds. Well, actually, it's pooper scooping, but we make money doing that too. So we do have some money coming in. Without the support of 4-H, I don't know what we would do. There's a feeling of a great relationship from the dog and the child. Hopefully with 4-H support our training, we have saved the dog from death and we totally pronounce spray and neutering.
We have never turned a child away that has an aggressive dog. Aggressive dogs are typically mistreated. Children with handicaps are also welcome in our club. Without a dog club in Traverse City, I don't know where kids would train their dogs. They can't afford any professional trainers. There aren't that many professional trainers in Traverse City. So we feel, our club is very beneficial. Some of our graduates from high school have gone on to become veterinary technicians, and they have enjoyed their dog training with us, so that's where they have gone to take their training. 4-H also helps support scholarships to attend seminars, workshops at MSU, 4 education at Kenton Center. Expiration days is very important for the 5 days. Youth would not be able to go if they did not have the support of MSU with their scholarships. MSU also provides a state dog competition for kids come in from all over the state and they go to MSU in the pavilions. Our only pay for this scene is a young Clover Bud, ages 5 to 8, struggle and move up as a dog lover and trainer. Without 4-H support, we could not have a dog training club. It's not something that we would probably pick up on our own. We need the support of 4-H to teach these kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Todd Ritter. I'm a 4-H leader. Live 19157 Beach Ridge Drive, Lake Ann, Michigan. Share with you a quick story. About 2 weeks ago, my son, who was in 4-H, was at a track meet. New to track, he was throwing shot put. He threw his first shot, and I watched another 13-year-old boy from an opposing team come over, grab him, took him off to the side, and start giving him pointers. There was a parent there from the opposing team. I said, well, hey, that's pretty neat. He said, yeah, he's a 4-H'er. That's all I had to say, and I understood. 4-H is education, but what it teaches is for kids to be better citizens. And it's a program we can't afford to be without. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I'll close it. I will, Dick, but I have one final comment. Now, my wife Ann and I have been married for 38 years, and I found out today that she learned to sew in 4-H when she was like 8 or 9 years old. I had no idea. She did not grow up on a farm. It's a small town. By the way, she sews very well also. Everyone clear on the motion?
Yep.
Okay, by roll call, please.
Commissioner Inman.
Yes.
Lemko,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Henschel,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Okay, and now we go to resource recovery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. Bob Osterhout and I are proposing a reorganization of the Resource Recovery Department and the Resource Recovery Council. On page 64, you'll see what we list out as a transition plan. This has been reviewed by Olson, Bisdock, and Howard, our public works attorneys, and they found that it's doable. We think by taking this step and bringing resource recovery back under the county board, we will streamline the process that's being used currently. If there's a decision by the sewer and water group and the townships to go out on their own and become an authority, which they have talked about in public meetings very recently, this would be the only program left in the Public Works program. County commissioners, back when we did strategic planning in 2009, strongly proposed to us at that time that they'd like to see this reorganized under the County Board of Commissioners, and so we're recommending that. We're recommending that for the time being anyway, we keep a Resource Recovery Council as an advisory board to the county board, and we're recommending 5 members be kept, but we're also recommending only quarterly meetings to cut down on the cost. We don't think it'll be more necessary because there'll be direct input with you as the county board. So these are a number of steps. What we'd like to ask for today is if you are comfortable with that, to give conceptual approval to us and let us begin the process of the transition.
You going to make the motion or me?
Mr. Chairman, I would move forward with the transition to bring the Resource Recovery Council underneath the Board of Commissioners.
Support.
Any discussion? Ron?
Just real quick, have you got any preliminary numbers on what that's going to save?
No, I have not. I have talked with Bob about that, but I don't recall what the numbers are. You know, it's going to basically be 2 meetings out of each quarter. It's going to be minimal other than staff time. You know, but it would still amount to several $1,000s.
Okay. I guess the only other comment I'd make, and Bob and I have talked about this makeup of this advisory committee. You know, I still wonder whether it should be a county/city representative, and whether we should have an environmental representative on the Resource Recovery Council. You know, I've sat on that council for a long time, in and out on a couple issues, but you know, the fact is, you know, that's the only question that I had about this format is currently we have 2 environmental representatives and an industry representative, and we've left the environmental piece off from this makeup.
Well,
and we've talked about it, and I don't know.
I think that's a good point.
This is a new draft. This is the different draft than the last one I've seen. So
that's a good
that's the
point,
only thing that I
Commissioner.
see that's changed.
I think what we'll be doing at each of these steps, we'll be back to see you about it. So we're going to bring you a document that allows you to establish what the committee would look like. That's about 3 steps from now.
Well, and
But
again, you know,
it's a good point.
is to remind you, you know, the first amendment of the solid waste plan is being presented. Bob presented some last week, and I've got one this week, and I think I have 3 next week, and I don't know how many Bob's got next week. So, you know, we will have that to all of the townships within the next 3 weeks, and the city for approval. And right behind that, we are actively working on an overall cover-to-cover amendment of our solid waste plan.
Okay.
Once the plan is fixed, then we have to go back and look at Ordinance 17, which is referenced in here about how that gives the authority back and forth and how you have to amend Ordinance 17. But Ordinance 17 is I'll just call it a dinosaur of a document that's very difficult to read and very difficult to try to use. So we are actively working on fixing those problems. And the Solid Waste Planning Committee are doing a great job to get there.
Jason?
Just my only concern is that the process wouldn't mess up the current solid waste plan that's cruising through very nicely.
Okay. Any further comments? All in favor of conceptual approval moving forward?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, paper and office supplies bid.
Katie Lauren is going to handle this issue.
Pick a good meeting to be at the end of the agenda.
Yeah.
Huh?
Katie Lauren, County Administration. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. Just wanted you to see that we did our due diligence with our office supplies and paper bids. It's currently approximately $136,000 we spent in 2010. Just wanted to let you know that already for the first quarter of 2011, the county has come down $8,000 in the spend with 100 less orders. So far year to date, With the recommendation with this new contract, we estimate that we'll save an additional $7,000 throughout 2011 and progressing throughout those years, because our current contract with Office Depot has come in with lower pricing. So it was definitely worth it to bid this out.
Motion to approve the
Support.
recommendation for Office Depot for a 3-year
Any discussion?
contract.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Katie.
Katie?
The next item, Mr. Chairman, is just a request for you to set up an ad hoc committee. I think at your recommendation, you were looking at having meetings next week, or, excuse me, in 2 weeks.
I've actually reserved this room for Monday, June 20th at 2 p.m.
Okay.
So at this point, I will take volunteers.
I would volunteer.
Larry, I want to be on it.
What is the
Sonny
committee?
Yeah, I'm
and
done.
Just to
Christine.
interview the applicants that are applied for the tribal grants, and all we do is just basically rank them what we think the importance is of the community, and then send our recommendation to the tribe.
Okay, so we have an ad hoc committee to review 2% tribal grant applications of Larry Inman, Christine Maxbauer, Sonny Wheelock, and Ross Richardson, with Sonny Wheelock to act as chair.
Beautiful.
I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Support.
Okay, any further discussion?
You all have fun with that?
Well, we have another opportunity in the winter, so, you know.
I have been very verbal for years that they ask us to endorse them and don't give us any opportunity for input, so, you know, I do support the idea that at least now they're at least taking input, whether or not they're considering it or not.
Not only that, but Commissioner Gilman and Commissioner Inman talked with tribal representatives last Friday, I
Last
think.
Friday.
About the fact that, you know, we're reemphasize the fact that we hope they will look seriously at our prioritization of these, and they indicated they certainly, those two certainly would, so.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Administrators update.
But we have
Nope.
one other item on the board application committee.
That's under new business.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Administrators.
Oh, okay.
I
Very-
wish we were down there, we're not there yet.
Very
We're not there.
quickly, we received a contact from the Leelanau County Administrator about a retirement in his equalization department. Some of you may not be aware that Lori Spencer has an independent contract that was okayed by this board to work as they have to have a level 4 assessor, and there are not many of them in the state. So Lori has been overseeing that program on her own independently under a separate contract with Leelanau County outside her regular work time as with Grand Traverse County. But now that their level 3 assessor is also retiring, one of their level 3s, I just wanted you to know that I initiated some discussions with the county administrator there to explore the possibility of a 2-county equalization department. We're told it's allowed under the law, but we're also told no one's done it. So I wanted you to be aware of the fact that we're looking at that possibility. We think, pardon?
It's not a bad idea at all. We share some really tight borders
Yep.
with Elmwood. And
So there may be some opportunities there for us, and with less and less level 4 assessors around, you know, there's going to have to be more of this going on. So I want you to be aware, I'm just exploring it, and I'll be back reporting to you on that. Also, I wanted you to know that Wexford County has modified their solid waste plan to include Grand Traverse County as one of their facilities, and that requires Grand Traverse County. So in other words, waste can be brought from there to our facilities. We don't have a landfill, but we have American Waste's facility that they're developing. That requires us to agree to that, and that's now with the Resource Recovery Council to review. So I want you to be aware.
Benzie County?
No, it's
Wexford. Okay. The third thing, and I apologize, I'm just back in town. Did everyone get a copy of the Circuit Court's letter on labor negotiations? Circuit Court has said they're going to take over their own negotiations, and in fact they have done that, and they have tentatively completed a contract negotiation with their employees. And they have the right to do so. I believe it still requires your support, your approval of that. This is substantial change. It's been 18 years we've been negotiating contracts with them. And so I have not had an opportunity to talk with them. I know that they sent me a letter Monday, I believe, and they negotiated with their employees on Tuesday. I think Commissioner Inman has talked with them. But they evidently signed a contract that I have not had a chance to review yet. So I don't have any more details than that, but I did want to report to you that this action had taken place, and I'll be prepared to discuss it in more detail with you next week.
Does that lessen your responsibilities in a way?
It takes us out of responsibility for that.
We just then say how much they have.
Pay for it.
Well, I mean, but that's still a matter of our budgeting process then.
That's exactly right, and I don't know that anything has changed in recent years, but the last time I reviewed the administrative rules for the court system, the state administrator's rules, basically they always have that option. We don't have the discretion of telling them to do it. They have the discretion of asking us to, or telling us to do it. But if they choose to do it, it's their choice. They are still bound by the budget, and they are bound by other similar contracts. Just, while driving today and looking at this, the assessment is this. I think I haven't seen it, but they're basically asking for the same thing that the district court got.
Right. But the other part of this, though, is that does that free them up, or does that free us up from Me Too type of situations?
That's an interesting question. It doesn't impact this because my understanding is they're doing, the Me Too's that we have are for this year, and they are asking for the same thing. But in effect, I think it could.
Okay.
I think it could. Because it's not your decision.
Right.
And that also means that if we were to reject an agreement, we couldn't be accused of bargaining in bad faith. Because we weren't bargaining.
There's too much to look at with this question. Ultimately, if they decided to propose something or accept an agreement that was outside their budget parameters or outside the parameters of what other settlements have taken place, I think you would have the ability and the right to challenge them. That challenge would take place in court, and of course, we don't want to get to that point if we don't have to. But I guess this points out the fact that I think we need to do work on developing further this relationship with the court and bringing that back in line.
Not to further entail matters of closed sessions, but this is, what I'm going to report to you is basically public information. MERS has changed their policy. It is on their website. They will not allow a unit that is currently under a defined benefit to close out to new members unless the funding agent, i.e. the county, is at least 80% or greater in its funding formula. Funding, the percent funded. So I'm just giving that to you as information, and if we want to discuss anything further about that and the contract that was submitted by the court system, we can do that in closed session.
Can that be a temporary, I mean, in other words, if we were to fund for that 80% for a couple of years, are you talking about the overall fund? It has to be at 80%.
Has to be at 80% on the time that you do that.
I would just like an opportunity before we discuss that further to do the analysis of it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we could buy our way to 80%. I have no idea until I have a chance to analyze this. There will be more to come on this.
Right.
And we will be reporting to you. But I did want to get that information. And I will provide you that letter, each of you that letter tomorrow so that you have it. Excuse me. I reported to you last week, but I wanted to reiterate, we received a $250,000 appropriation or donation from the Fry Foundation for helping us in removing the Sabin Dam. Also last week at the management meeting of the dam projects, we were made aware that over the last 2 weeks we've gotten almost $1.5 million in additional funding for dam removal. That money came in way of grants through the tribe and other federal sources as well as this Fry money. So I think we're at about $3.5 to $4 million now at this point in time. It looks like we have all the money needed to remove Brown Bridge, and we're well on our way to removing have the money with Sabin. Tomorrow I will be meeting with several of the representatives of the different groups, because the decision we're going to have to make is, and I'm going to have to involve Bob in these discussions and Dean, the decision we're going to have to make is whether or not we manage this grant. The city, for example, got the $1 million from Great Lakes Fisheries with our help, and they're going to manage that grant themselves. Dean and I have been talking about whether we'll manage that grant, whether we'll recommend to you to manage that grant, or recommend to you to sign a contract with Conservation Resource Alliance, perhaps, to manage that grant. We know with federal grants, we'll have to manage them. So we're going to have a discussion with them about that tomorrow, but I wanted you to be aware that money has come in, and that was really quite a boost in the last 2 weeks. And then also tomorrow I'll be representing the county. There is a Michigan Funders Association, all of the foundations, public and private, they have an association. They're meeting here now, and they have, primarily with the help of Rotary Charities, agreed to hear a presentation. All of the funders will be there to hear a presentation from myself and others about the dam project, and this is an opportunity that's pretty amazing to have all those people at one place to listen to our project, and then they're going to do a tour of the dams and get some more information. So it's a real opportunity for us. So I wanted you to know I'll be doing that as well. That's all I have.
And when is that presentation being done?
I think it's at 3 o'clock.
Afternoon?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, that brings us to unfinished business. There is none. New business, board applicant committee review process. Mr. Inman?
Yes, I asked that this be placed on the agenda, and I met with the county administrator to help me put together a proposed process that when the board approved the appointment application policy, we went back and revisited the issue or question about a background check. We changed the application and took the criminal question off the application, but we left the disclosure that they sign on the bottom of the application that allows us to do a background background check on all applicants. And I was given some thought on this, and what I'm proposing, I believe, is a more smoother process for how we would evaluate the background checks up front rather than on the back side that we had thought of. And so my suggestion is that when an applicant submits his or her interest in applying for a board and fills out the application, they also sign the form that allows Human Resources to do a background check. I check with Dennis. He indicates that there's no cost and very little time in accomplishing that because it's all online, and that the applicants, when they receive the background check, that they will that we will review that during the we would have that information at the time of the interview. And what I'm also suggesting is that as a part of the list of questions that we have for the applicants, we would ask the question, is there anything in your background that we should know about that would be of a criminal nature? So I think it's a cleaner process rather than trying to select a candidate and then doing the background check. And then at some point in time, if there was ever an applicant that had an issue, then we would have to try to figure out, reassemble the committee back again and discuss if it was a concern or not a concern. So I think this is a cleaner process. We would know up front during the interview process, we'd have that information, and we would be able to ask the question as well. So I'm just suggesting this is a part of the process that we use.
Do you want a motion of support for that?
I would make the motion based on the recommendation in the memorandum.
Support.
Yeah.
We have legal counsel's input.
Yeah, Commissioner Inman asked me to be here if there were any questions about this issue, but I guess the only thing I would add is I think part of this was to give the applicant more information up front about how the background check would be used. And I would suggest adding a statement on the form that they sign that the background check, whatever information is gathered, is public information. It's subject to FOIA. That gives them more information to know whether they want to go ahead and apply or not, and prevents, possible embarrassment later on.
Well, I guess, maybe to expand on what Bob just said, I'm a little concerned about, do we have a criteria by which what information found on the background check is relevant?
No, you had a discussion about this last time.
I know.
And I believe I remember Commissioner Fleece speaking to this. I think the consensus of feeling at that time was you'll be presented with the information as part of the application, and then the committee will make a decision of whether or not it's serious or significant enough to make a recommendation of appointment. And that's how you left it last time.
Well, my concern is, might come as a surprise, but I've had a couple speeding tickets in my younger days, Those are misdemeanors that probably still show up. But there are people that have had more serious type issues, 20 years ago, and do they want that to become public knowledge? And as soon as we contain this background check with the application, it becomes public knowledge, and it becomes publicly accessible.
Well, they're going
It would be their decision to do
So
that.
then my question becomes, do we start to lose qualified candidates because something that happened 10 years ago that they've got a different life?
Potentially.
Potentially.
And
But I would
that concerns me, I understand, the arguments about doing background checks and this and that, but I'm sometimes not sure that the information found in the background check is relevant to what I'm asking them to do and the service I'm asking them to provide.
It goes beyond that
It goes
for a
both
lot
ways.
of, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It goes beyond that for a lot of positions. The, last night, Kentwood Commission voted to put a resolution on their November ballot that, if you guys remember, in the last election, we voted, as a state, we voted to say, if you have a felony that's related to your position of, your official position, you cannot occupy that position any longer. Well, they just put a thing on the ballot that says, if you have a felony, you can't occupy an elected position in Kentwood County. What? Kentwood, Grand Rapids, anyway. Kent County. Yeah, Kent.
Well, Sonny, I mean, the issue you raise is the issues we've been struggling with this all along.
Right.
And I think it's more the idea that, we're trying to get in front of it instead of ending up behind it, picking somebody and then finding out afterwards, well, gee, what is that? Then we find out, so, well, what does that mean? Now what do we do? I mean, the FOIAbility is a problem, but generally speaking, people aren't FOIAing this stuff unless, unless it became an issue.
Well, I guess, is there some way that we can develop a criteria of what type of charges are relevant to the appointment?
Well, but it's all a judgment thing. I mean, it's like,
It's all over
an
everywhere.
offense last year means a lot more than an offense 10 years ago or 20 years ago
Right.
or whatever, so I don't know.
And you could weigh that against the other applicants
Yeah.
in terms of their
Yep,
strength.
and if you have an opportunity to talk with those people in the interview process, you can get into more
Yeah.
detail with them. Really, I think the only real concern is if good people decide not to because they don't want, that to come out or potentially come out. But you know what? I think you have to respect that that's their choice.
Well, I have to agree with Sonny that the criteria makes sense, not only for us as the committee that's looking at it, but for the people applying. If they got a DUI and they're going to apply for something, they need to know that, don't bother, because that's on the list. Or, if they've got domestic violence, you're applying for a, certain board. Maybe it matters, maybe it don't. If we have some criteria, we can put right in there, if you have this.
I think it'd be very hard to draw, guidelines that would be.
It wouldn't be that.
That we could follow in all cases.
Yeah.
I think we could spend months doing that and still end up with nothing that satisfies anybody.
Bob Cooney had his hand up.
I'm sorry.
I did tell Larry that I thought coming up with a policy would be very difficult. For example, with DUI, well, it doesn't matter if it was more than 10 years ago. Does it matter if it was 20 years ago? Does it matter whether there was one conviction or two convictions? You know, there's such a range of criminal offenses, and I think it would be difficult to come up with a policy. About the closest I came to, you know, maybe some guidance on this is that there is a statute that governs removal of appointed or elected officials by the governor, and it talks about someone who commits a felony while in office. So a felony offense is certainly something that could be, you know, maybe that's the disqualifier. And you should know that after 5 years, someone can get a felony expunged. A lot of people do it through our circuit court. And, you know, if it's something that a circuit court judge felt that this person has, you know, they served their time, they've rehabilitated themselves enough, you know, to have a conviction expunged, they can do that one time in their life, okay? And they can't have any other prior convictions. So that's, you know, maybe a criteria. There are very few circumstances under which the governor can remove an officer. One is habitual drunkenness. So, you know, you might think a DUI, do we care about that? But that's one of the reasons the governor could remove an officer.
Yeah, you know, my only comment on this is that, in a sense, we're hiring an employee to represent us on the committees. And so we should be very diligent, be very conscious of some of the backgrounds that we have to do. It's nothing more than what our personnel department would be going through and hire an employee that goes to work for Grand Traverse County. And these people are representing us on the committees that give us feedback for their prospective board that they might sit on. So I think it's really important that we do look at this.
All right, we have a motion.
Let's pass the motion, and then if we want to
Well,
come
yeah,
back with a criteria.
do you want to make the change that Bob suggested?
And that change was the...
Background check right on the
Information
application.
is foiable.
Yeah, that would be
Yes, and
to
the
add a
information's
statement.
foible.
I came up with something.
And that's on the form, that's on the...
Yeah, the form they sign, background.
That's just a heads up for the...
Yeah, I mean, because, yeah, we never approved that form, they just have that form there.
So Bob will make that change.
Bob will make that change.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion, then?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Which brings us to our third public comment.
Yeah.
No public, gee whiz, okay. Commissioner committee report? Oh, darn.
Now that my
Somebody's
tooth,
hands
now that my
going
tooth
up?
is fixed,
Come
I'm
on,
talking
man.
more.
Go ahead, Larry.
All right. At the last meeting, last week, Commissioner Wheelock made a suggestion that we get a balance on, and Katie sent out the balance of $212 as of June 2nd in our Commissioners Fund for a possible appropriation to the animal shelter that has been just recently been publicized as having financial difficulty. So I'm reporting out that we've got a balance of $212. So if you'd like to make, and it's our money, you know, so it's just a consensus among the commissioners, if you'd like to make an appropriation at this time for that money.
Isn't it there in case, you know, we have an employee with an illness or a death?
Well, it's there for flowers.
Right, I mean, if we go,
Cards.
I'm just thinking, if there's nothing there, we can't
Yeah.
fulfill the purpose of the fund.
The next paycheck,
maybe
there's
$100
another-
might be
Well, generally,
sufficient.
at the end of the year, we have a surplus and we usually donate it. Last year, the surplus wasn't very big, so we just left it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
at the end of the year, we might revisit your suggestion? Is it?
I mean, you know, if you want to make an appropriation now for $100 or $50, I mean, whatever.
You know, I'm just going to suggest, you can really talk about this after the meeting. It's
Sure.
not really
It's not-
county
it's not public
business. You
business.
should just do it after the meeting and decide what you're going to do.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Mr. Maxbauer.
Okay, Tuesday, Commission on Aging met, and I would like to report to everyone that Commission on Aging staff and volunteers put together and delivered 491 barbecues to people who could not attend the barbecue, seniors. I also want to let the county board know that the Commission on Aging Board voted to increase client fees 15% as of August 1st. Please note that we have never had a fee increase, and we do provide service on a sliding scale fee. The lowest fee is $1 an hour, and that fee would go to $1.15. We also voted to discontinue the Senior Assistance Program. It's a program that has provided emergency assistance to seniors in the past, and what we are doing instead is refocusing to stay in line with our vision, and I'm going to read, our vision is to enable seniors to remain in their homes. And please understand, we still have emergency assistance for things like heating, when you cannot pay a heating bill. But the general broad spectrum of senior assistance is no longer going to be available. And I do want to invite input from the county board on whether or not we should get together. We have had in the past an annual meeting with the Commission on Aging Board. We did not have one recently due to the fact that the Commission on Aging Board was working very diligently trying to pass the senior millages. So please, if feedback is certainly welcome if you would like to get together and discuss any of these issues with the Commission on Aging Board. And also, the Commission on Aging Board voted to discontinue the wait list voucher program. Now, I will tell you, none of these votes were unanimous. But those are the Commission on Aging Board's decisions. We had two special Parks and Rec Board meetings. One was to hear from a former Canton Parks and Rec executive on cost recovery guidelines, and I thought the most important thing that I got out of that meeting was the individual from Canton said the best decision she ever made was to hire a business manager for her parks. And she showed us some of the cost recovery outlines that they use in Canton now, and the entire Parks Board thought it was an extremely valuable presentation and very informative. And I think that we're going to be taking a good hard look at some of the information that was presented to us. We also had another special meeting, and we did vote not to restrict pool hours. Commissioner Richardson did attend the meeting, and he was influential, and I'm going to, I did review the video so that I could speak accurately. He stated the budget crisis has been a little overstated, and if you only look at one narrow little thing, it can look bad, but if you look at the whole picture, it really isn't that significant. Now, I respectfully disagree with Commissioner Richardson, as he well knows. In 2007, Grand Traverse County lost 49 jobs. In 2008, 573 jobs. In 2009, 3,133 jobs. And in 2010, Grand Traverse County lost 881 jobs, for a grand total of 4,636 jobs just in the last few years. And we are starting to see a little bit of a recovery, anemic as it is. We have, in the first quarter, recovered 295 of those jobs, but at this recovery rate, it will take us 15 and a half years to get back to where we were in 2008. And employment, in my opinion, drives housing prices up, which affects our revenue. So in my opinion, I don't think we have, I don't think there's a short-term positive outlook. I think this is going to be a long-term impact on our revenues. One thing I did agree with Commissioner Richardson on was when he said, please be sure of your data, be sure you have a good foundation before you take any action. And I will tell you that the information that I received that evening, in my opinion, was insufficient. And another commissioner also mentioned that the data that they received was insufficient, and we could not make a decision to really make a change in restricting pool hours. So at this particular point in time, there is going to be no restriction in pool hours unless mandated by the county board.
Before you speak, Larry, if I can just clarify, the comments that Commissioner Maxbauer is mentioning, I made public comment at the, was it May 17th, regular meeting of Parks and Rec, and then the special meetings you were talking about happened on June 2nd. Now, I did not attend June 2nd. I did come on May 17th and made more or less those public comments that you mentioned. But the actions you took not to reduce pool hours happened on June 2nd.
Yes,
and I was not,
but your comments,
I was not at that meeting.
your comments were, well, had an impact, as well they should.
Okay, well, nice to know I'm so influential. Mr. Commissioner Inman.
Unless my hearing has gone bad, I do not understand your analysis on the number of employees that we have lost over a period of years. I mean,
Jobs. It's from the Michigan Labor Department.
Are you talking about Grand Traverse County
employment numbers? Yeah.
No, Grand Traverse County jobs. County jobs.
Oh, county-wide.
Not
Not
county employees.
We lost 4,000
jobs,
of them. I'm like,
no, jobs in the county.
Where was happy hour?
Overall county employment, I believe, is what Commissioner Maxwell.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, any other commission, okay,
Monday, we had a marathon of the city commission. You were there as well.
I didn't stay for it all.
It looks like we're trying to make one
You didn't stay till
tonight.
at least
In fact, it lasted so long, we took the clock off the wall and turned it upside down, so. In any event, there was a couple announcements there that I thought, a couple of high points. And this Saturday, 9 a.m. in Grolickville, there's a boat auction. DTE gave $150,000 for the ongoing renovation of the bayfront. That was for the water feature for Clinch, but they awarded the $150,000 to the Traverse City Commission. Of course, they approved the solid waste plan, and the Traverse City Light and Power budget was not approved. Now, one of the things I think that really, there's a couple of things I think that actually rubbed the commission raw, was the, when Coco came out and asked if, he said, a vote against this budget, the Traverse City Light and Power budget, as a vote against community involvement. I mean, essentially threw down the gauntlet. And that, and of course, the two positions that would be added as a part of the budget position, I think, turned off a couple of the commissioners, and they were not able to have enough votes to pass that budget. They're going to be looking at it again in about 2 weeks. They did do something pretty remarkable. They adjusted their garage fund, and they paid down $110,000 in their 345 fund that needed to be taken care of, and they dropped taxes. They lowered taxes for the Traverse City residents, net at $500,000. And so, there were some people who said, I don't care if you do that. We want to keep the jobs that are going to be lost as a result of this. But that's what they did. They lowered taxes, and frankly, I applaud them for it. And not to mention, I have another reason to applaud for it. It was pushed pretty heartily by my father, Michael Gilman, and also Chris Bisdock. And they worked together on this. Chris, both of them coming from a couple opposite sides of the spectrum, coming together to give some real relief to the Traverse City residents, and I thought that was a good thing. So, but that's my spot of the moment report for Traverse City Commission.
So just a couple of things. One is the Department of Human Services is going to be meeting as a joint meeting with Kalkaska County at our next meeting, and we will be going to Kalkaska. This will be because now it's a three-county that the Dawn is over the Leelanau, Grand Traverse, and Kalkaska County. So this will be a joint meeting that we will have over there in Kalkaska. And then also, I don't know if any of you read the different news updates, but just for your information, if you're not aware of it, Lou Calder will be retiring before the end of the year. And we are in the process of looking for a new director for the Conservation District. So if it's starting to hit the news media, so I felt that you should be made aware of that also.
Anything else?
I have notices too, so go ahead.
Okay, well, just one more commission comment. Also at the city commission meeting Monday night, in addition to the reduction in taxes, they also raised the base water rate $2 a month and the base sewer rate $3 a month.
Yes.
So
That made a lot of
for
sense.
the average homeowner has looking at a $60 increase in water and sewer fees, probably more than they are going to save on the tax reduction. That's another thing. Okay, now we're going to,
It was going to happen either way.
that's questionable. Anyway.
Notices.
Notices and/or announcements.
So,
Go ahead.
I handed out to all the county commissioners the map of the transportation for Beta and all the surrounding public transportation, which is really a long time coming. Also, this is Alternative Transportation Week for Grand Traverse County citizens, encouraging you to either carpool, ride your bike, or take the Beta bus to and from your employment or to do some of your events that you're doing in the community. Also, don't forget that Dan Scott, we have a meeting with him on the 21st of June. The Conservation District Tour is scheduled for the 23rd of June, so I would encourage anybody that can be able to go do that. This is going to be a great opportunity to see what the Conservation District does, so we'll be doing that. Also, on the 13th of June, there's a TIF review, which is a joint meeting with the city to find out more about what TIF tax increment financing is. And then on the 15th of June is the MDOT has got their rail plan that is being presented, and that will be at Michigan Works, that you can come in and make a comment about what the rail plan is for the state of Michigan that they have put together. And then on the 18th, I'd welcome everybody to come down, bring their kids to Free Fishing Day down to the Maritime Academy, and that's we have about 600 kids that come in, and anybody that wants to come down and fish and free, we furnish the fishing poles.
And do you clean them?
And we clean the fish. Oh, wow. We have people that will clean the fish. We will have people that will help them bait the hooks. We have bait, and we will have fishing poles down there, so I would encourage anybody with kids. They've never had a chance to be able to do it. We've had a lot of those over in the past years. This is a Rotary project, and it's really an exciting day. That's great stuff. So.
Cool.
Okay, anything else? No
Motion
closed
to adjourn.
session, right?
No, sir.
Okay, move to adjourn?
Yeah, move to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Ladies, restroom's the same way.
And all the folks at home go, oh, jeez.
Dennis.